from Toronto to Tokyo, and from Thonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player One novel. Join our hosts each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player One podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert and the rest of the Gunchers for this week's episode. Hello, Gunchers, and welcome back to The Basement. This is episode 0006, part 6, by the power of Grayskull. I am your host, Albert Padilla, and we had the Hallidays. Whoa, that was that not intentional. We had the holidays roll in. Sir. Hey, be quiet. I haven't called you in yet.
Sorry.
We had the holidays roll in, so we kind of fell behind a little bit in terms of the release schedule, but nonetheless, we're back. And we're back in greater numbers. And if you can't hear him already, he's already just piping. He's been waiting to do this for the whole month here. Joining me tonight, first up, is the producer and owner of Ear Glue Media. He's a good friend and a cunning warrior. Please welcome back to the show, the Dark Lord of podcasting, Mike Rondeau. Mike, welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel like we did the Halloween special, but I haven't been on the official episodes in a while because I've been banned since I mentioned something with The Last Jedi. But I'm back. I'm back to annoy everybody.
Yeah. No, he's been on his best behavior. In fact, we just wrapped up the Last Jedi 1 year later show on the Cantina Cast, and I got hats off to you, man. You did a pretty good job of being pretty objective and, keeping it in your pants. So thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that.
Jeez, hey, no problem, buddy.
So, and then also, we had to bring in the big guns because we've been off for so long that joining tonight, once again, she is she's royalty, really, for us. Please welcome none other than James Halliday herself, the always charming, always funny Morgan Marshall. Morgan, welcome back to the show. We're glad you were with us tonight.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me again.
It seems like it was forever. And I have to apologize because originally we were going to do Back to the Future as part of this show. And that was a hard message to send to you saying, hey, Morgan, we're probably not going to do Back to the Future because I really wanted to do something special. But you were pretty cool about it and said that you'd be willing to come back and do that. So thank you in advance for that show. And thank you for being here tonight. We will get to Back to the Future. But I just felt like I didn't want to cram that movie or even worse, the trilogy into, 2 hours. It's just not enough time.
Honestly, yeah. I completely understand. Yeah. I think it's much better this way.
Yep. So we're going to give it the due diligence and the time that it respectively deserves. So
just a quick question, Albert.
Yeah.
Can I invite myself on that? Because I love Back to the Future. I don't know if you knew that, but
wow, that's really awkward to say on the air. Let's talk after the show, Mike, if you don't mind.
Okay, so that's a no. All right, that's cool. No, that's fine. That's fine. I know I annoy you. It's okay. It's all right.
No, I love you, Mike. All right.
I know.
So,
I know you hate me. Sorry.
If this is your first episode of The Basement, what you're hearing right now is really just a kind of series of episodes that are really covering Chapter 6. We are trying to wade through Chapter 6 and the plethora of pop culture references that we find in that chapter. Just as a reminder, in Chapter 6, this is where Wade is kind of reading off all of Halliday's personal favorites, from writers to directors to TV shows, video games. So we're kind of pulling from all of those different lists, mixing them all together and covering what we can as best we can. So that's the plan. That's what's happening. And we're going to dive right into this and start with a little known author by the name of Stephen King. So Stephen King, hopefully, if you're listening to the show, you probably know who Stephen King is. Even if you're not, most people know who he is. Yeah. He was born in 1947. He is a prolific writer. He's written hundreds, maybe even thousands of stories, all collected together in his lifespan. But right off the bat, with the authors, it was really kind of what we've been trying to do is touch on some of their more bigger works. And a lot of the authors have, maybe 1-2 books that have won Nebulas or Pulitzers and that kind of thing. But with Stephen King, it was such a huge, we could do a whole show on Stephen King, to be quite honest, and all this and the stuff that he's done. But for the homework, I really just threw something out there and I said, you know what, why don't we just talk about maybe our favorite story? And by story, this could be maybe our favorite novel, short story. It could even be a movie that's been turned into, or a book that's been turned into a movie, or a story that's been turned into a movie. Anything really is up for grabs here. But Mike, I'm gonna start with you. What I guess when you think Stephen King, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you as a fan or as a follower of Stephen King?
Maximum Overdrive, baby.
Really?
I love that movie so bad when I was a kid, and it's horrible. It's like, going back and watching Gamera, and all that stuff, and I shouldn't do that. But in any case, yeah, Maximum Overdrive, which is based off of the short story there, Trucks or whatever, and of course Stephen King directed it. I don't know. For some reason, I loved that movie when I was a kid, and it's actually probably hard. Maybe it was the clown thing on the truck. I don't know. It was pretty cool. Yeah, the goblin there. It was pretty cool. I just thought it was awesome. But I guess it was probably the big thing for me, like the scariest one when I was, I forget what age I was when it came out, the TV thing came out, and it scared the crap out of me because I hate clowns, and the whole sewer scene, it threw me for a loop, man. You could go on and on, which movie or book or a story or what. I mean, I was thinking this today when I was prepping for the show coming on here. I'm like, is he in the Guinness Book of Records for like most things written or something? Because it seems like it's like everything. It is like everywhere. I don't know. But yeah, I would go with Maximum Overdrive. And of course the Stand has the best opening of a miniseries ever. That I've always loved that. Blue Oyster Cult playing, and then all the bodies laying around. That was like my favorite opening of all time, other than Star Wars. I don't know why, but I just thought it was cool. If you're gonna go with an apocalyptic, I can't even talk tonight, movie or something, that's the way you got to start the movie. But,
yeah. So I want to just touch on Maximum Overdrive because you brought it up. So you've opened a can of worms here.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
First off, it's a terrible movie, but nonetheless, it's
charming.
Here's what I remember from that movie. One, it had music from AC/DC in it. Two, it had
everything.
Yeah, it had the Goblin, the Hobgoblin, or I think it's just the Goblin, whatever, from Spider-Man. But the one thing that stands out for me from that movie is I still remember the commercial that Stephen King, when they were promoting this, he had a thing where he was talking to the camera, and his last line was, and I remember this because it was I heard like somebody say the word hell on TV, but he said, "I'm going to scare the hell out of you," and he like pointed at
nobody was scared.
Yeah, nobody was scared. It was a terrible movie. But anyways, those are the things that I remember most. Maybe Emilio Estevez, I guess you can throw him in there as well, because he went on to do some really more terrible and better things. But yeah, that's kind of a dark horse.
It's typical 80s movie.
Yep. All right, Morgan.
I would leave it at that. Yeah.
You got to top Maximum Overdrive. So the bar is set really low. So what is it when you think of Stephen King? What's something that, I guess, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Okay, well, the first thing that comes to mind is It, which scarred me for life as a child.
Yes.
So that is not my
favorite.
But The Shining is definitely my favorite of his work. I saw the movie before I read the book, but it was nice to picture like Jack Nicholson as the main character as I was reading it. I really like him.
Yeah, he's amazing. That movie's amazing. So let me ask you then, because you and I have never really spoken about this, but when you went into the movie Ready Player One for the first time, were you aware that The Shining was in it?
Yes, I was.
Oh, okay. So it would. Either way, it's probably a unique experience, but I would imagine someone going in as a fan of The Shining and having, really no spoilers, and then seeing that and, the depths and that Steven Spielberg went through to recreate some of those scenes had to be just mind blowing. Even as someone who was spoiled, I would imagine that pretty much tickled you, I guess, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean totally. Like it was. I knew that it was going to be like a simulation for them.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that they were going to do it that well. I mean, like
Right.
It looked so real, which is insane. It's amazing what they can do nowadays.
Absolutely. And, and honestly, in retrospect now, I remember when the movie was announced, and, the first thing that ran through my head, which ran through probably the heads of a number of people that were fans of the Ready Player One novel, was how in the world are they going to recreate War Games or Holy Grail or any of the other, movies and stuff that they had to live through and play through. And when we found out that the challenges had been changed for the keys and stuff, it kind of made sense. But then if you think about it, really they ended up pulling it off to some extent. They maybe could have gone and did the other movies like they did in the book and maybe held it true. My guess is there was probably, legal and copyright issues that really got in the way of a lot of that stuff. But it was really neat to actually see them put something in there like that. So I think we got a flavor of what we got from the novel in the movie, even though it wasn't actually from the novel itself.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
I'm glad they went with The Shining and not It.
Yes.
Personally, but that's just me. Or Cujo. That's another one. I didn't like that one either.
So we have a storm drain like right in front of our yard, and every year I have been dying to
put a red balloon.
Yes, and I've never done it. It's one of those things where I'm like, I'm going to really scare the crap out of these trick-or-treaters this year. And for whatever reason, we just never can make the time, or I forget, or it's too late. But at some point, I'm warning anybody that lives on my street, I am going to scare the hell out of you. There you go.
Well, you got to put a little paper boat in like Georgie's raincoat there.
Right.
And, maybe like one of those, those roadblock things. Do that and see what happens.
Yeah. But it's coming. I can't wait. If I do,
make sure you film it, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's coming.
Can we talk about for a second how twisted the book is, though? I've never read it, but that book is a whole lot more twisted than the movie.
There's a lot of eating going on.
Yeah, that, and then like the kids, to get rid of them, they're children, and they all have to like do it. Like,
have you? So you've never read the book? When you need I should make that your homework assignment. You should read the book.
No.
I know you're not a big fan of scary movies, if I remember correctly.
I gotta go with her on this one. Don't do
one. It's way too big.
It's clowns. Yeah, well,
I don't have that time. Don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, it's got clowns. Either of you have a phobia of clowns?
Yes. Yeah, because of that movie.
Clowns. Yeah,
really?
Pretty much. Yeah. Actually,
okay, well, it all makes sense now.
Mine goes even further back because it was this. Maybe you remember this, Howard. There was a show on, and I think it was NBC back mid '80s called not True Crime or something. Crime something. And there was I remember this one episode with these mimes that were kidnapping kids. And mimes are even worse than clowns because they don't say a darn thing.
Yeah.
And they do these fake poses and stuff. And they were just kidnapping kids. And it freaked me out.
God.
And then, of course, it comes along. And then, well, that's it. I'm done. So.
Well, so we're going to really get off on a tangent here. But I don't want to. You'll remember, I think I've mentioned that I've worked at SeaWorld. I know I mentioned it on Cantina Cast at one point. But you want to take a guess one of the characters that I played at SeaWorld? It was a mime.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
this explains everything now.
I'll have to. No, it doesn't. Yeah, so I'll have to see if I can find some pictures, but I'll send them to you, Mike.
No, I don't want to see those. I'm going to freak out.
This may be your Christmas card coming, Mike Rondeau.
Oh, don't you dare do that, sir.
Anyways,
I shouldn't have said anything.
Let's get this ship back on the right track here.
You're going to swear, sir.
So Stephen King, for me, it's Shawshank Redemption, because it's the 1994 movie is, I never actually had read the story. I watched this movie, and it is still one of, depending on the day and month, it probably ranks up there in my top 10 movies of all time. And then certainly when you start getting more narrow in terms of scope, it's in there in the top 1 or 2 of movies that have to do with, crime or, prison, rape, I don't know, whatever. But it's definitely a movie that it just had a huge impact on me. And I loved, Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, and just the whole cast was amazing. Did you guys ever see Shawshank Redemption?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Morgan? I've seen it many times for years.
Okay, yeah. So I'm in good company. But yeah, and it was years later that I found out that this was actually even when I watched it, I saw it in the theater, went and saw it a few times. Again, there was no internet really back then. So I didn't know that it was based on a Stephen King novel or a story anyways, until much later in life. So, and then interestingly enough, they actually did a play in 2009. They took the story, took aspects of the movie, and they came up with a Broadway play, or at least I think maybe it was off Broadway, but nonetheless, they actually did a play in 2009 that's based on the Shawshank Redemption. So that's my favorite from Stephen King stuff. Although, again, he's just done so many things. It's really hard to pick any one thing from just the large body of work that he has.
I agree.
Now, I don't know, on record, is The Shining still the only one that he doesn't like, though? I don't know. I've never clarified if he hates anything else, like the miniseries or anything. I don't think he hated that. I
don't think so either. And I know he's been on record as saying it wasn't his favorite, and I don't actually know the reasons why. I don't follow Stephen King that closely.
I know he did his own version of The Shining, and I guess it didn't. I forget what it was, but that was eons ago. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool. I'm glad you brought her up, because it is one of the things going back to the movie that they mentioned, right? That was one of for the second key there. So, all right, well, let's move on from Stephen King and let's talk about maybe a lesser known writer by the name of Joe Haldeman. And Joe Haldeman he's born in 1943, still alive to this day. His big claim to fame, and again, he's got a number of other books. All of these writers really have a lot of work. But his one is The Forever War, which was a novel that was written in 1974. It won both the Nebula and the Hugo Awards. And it's kind of set so it's weird. It takes place between 1997 and 2024, where man is kind of fighting this war with these another being called the Taurans. And no, they're not the World of Warcraft Taurans. But the main character is named Mandela, and he's basically a soldier that's in this fight. And the interesting thing about this novel is that they have to travel thousands of light years or far away to actually fight this battle. And so thanks to time dilation, he tends to age much slower because he spends most of his time traveling through space and fighting this war, so that by the beginning of the book, it starts again in 1997. By the end of it, it's 2024. And everyone else, actually, no, I take that back. By the end of the book, it's 3,143, and yet he really hasn't aged much at all. And so he's seen all these people kind of come and go, governments come and go, and all the while he's been, fighting this war. He's got a wife as well. He has a baby boy at the very end of the book, but it's a very interesting type of story. I've never personally read it. I found it interesting enough when I was kind of doing some research, but either of you, have you ever heard of Joe Haldeman, or have you read any of his works?
I've never read it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. Morgan?
I have never read this book. It sounds really good, so I probably will read it, but I read The Accidental Time Machine.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I didn't even realize, honestly, I didn't even pay attention to the author, no offense to Mr. Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't even realize that he was a very accomplished science fiction author. But the book is really good. I love time travel. I mean, y'all already know that. But it's very good. There's a lot of crazy things that happen. Basically, he travels into the future, the protagonist, and just all hell breaks loose every time he goes further and further, and he can only go to the future. He can't go back. So
interesting.
A lot of crazy stuff goes down.
This was never made into a movie, was it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It should be.
It sounds familiar. I don't know why.
I came across it on Amazon one day, just like randomly. Yeah. And I was like, this might be good.
See, they know that you constantly search for Back to the Future stuff and said, oh, by the way, this may be something you'd be interested in. So, yeah, they know lots about us.
Well, the phone's listening anyway. So,
True.
Pretty soon the phone's going to record our conversation. I don't have to edit it. Just throw it out there. It'll be fine. All
right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment in the show where you can put on your tinfoil hats because Mike Rondeau is the book was interesting. This particular one, I guess, The Forever War was interesting. And oddly, this is actually another one that was turned into a play. So it was actually turned into a play over at Chicago's Organic Theater in 1983. And there was actually a graphic novel that was created in 1988. I was trying to find a copy of this because I was like, well, that'd be kind of neat to see this story in a graphic novel. I really couldn't track down one of them. Couldn't track down a copy in time for the show. I guess the other thing that's probably worth noting is that they've been trying to make this into a movie for a very long time, as far back as 2009, with the latest rumor that Channing Tatum was looking to play the main character of Mandela.
Okay.
So
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, well, you and my wife, right? She was all about it.
Albert. Yeah, did you ever think of that?
Maybe you do, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well. But yeah, hey, if they can get Channing Tatum on there, I think they've just tapped into a specific group of folks that may not have been interested in the movie to begin with. So, at some point it may come out. It looks like that. It's a lot of these books, honestly, that we've been covering. They have people that are interested in, making them into movies, but, for whatever one reason or another, it never really pans through. So hopefully this one will get turned into a movie at some point. The other author that I wanted to cover tonight was Bruce Sterling, born in 1954. He's also known as Chairman Bruce, is I guess what he goes by, and he's really one of the founding members of the cyberpunk genre in science fiction, along with others like William Gibson, who we covered on this show already. Rudy Rucker, John Shirley. There's a ton of these guys that were all writing this cyberpunk stuff early in the 80s. And I think, for him, there's a couple things that outside of his work, there was some really interesting things. He's got a number of what they call neologisms, which are basically phrases that may be in the process of becoming real use or real words that we would commonly use, but they haven't been fully accepted into mainstream language. So let's say Mike makes up a word like Yoder.
I was
right, so
say,
Yoder is Yoda, right? To Mike,
that's a Mikeism.
Mikeism, right? So
or Rondeauism.
If we all started calling Yoda Yoder,
listen, I'm from Rhode Island. What do you want me to do? I can't help this. All right, it's just the way I am.
Right.
I don't like it, but it gives me charm.
So here,
anyway,
I have 3 of the neologisms that he's created, and I'm going to ask Morgan. I'm going to ask you the first one. The first one is called Bucky junk. So I want you to take your best shot. What do you think Bucky junk means?
Something from KFC? Oh.
You're not Morgan.
Yeah, that's true.
That would be clucky junk, not Bucky junk.
Yeah, clucky junk. There you go.
Let's see. I'm gonna guess that it refers to something that is trash or trashy.
That is an outstanding guess because it actually means difficult to recycle consumer waste made of carbon nanotubes. So you were right there, man. Right there.
Dead on. Totally dead on.
All right.
I'm gonna start using this every day.
Yep. So try to work that into your lexicon, everyday's language. All right, Mike, you've got the next one.
Oh, great.
Your word is, what is a Wexelblatt disaster?
No idea.
All right. Well, time's up.
Other than when I edit this show. That's
right.
Is.
Editing the basement. No, I'm sorry. The correct answer is when natural disasters trigger secondary, more damaging failure of human technology. So yeah, the basement basically is.
Oh yeah,
I
was close. Yeah.
All right, sure. Morgan, I'll give you the last one. The last one is blobject.
Blobject. I don't know, a blobby object.
That's actually where the name. Yeah, he's kind of put those 2 words together. You're right. So the answer is it's a product, often a household one, that has smooth, flowing curves, bright colors, and no shapes.
Like, what would that be?
Maybe like an Apple iMac? I don't know. Like the old iMacs. Remember how they were just kind of one, it looked like one kind of continuous
I always wanted one of those.
molded. I know they were really cool from a design thing. But yeah, that was the closest thing I could think of because I had the same question like, okay, yeah, cool. What in the world would that be though?
Well, I know why no one's using these. But
poor Bruce.
Well, I know. We may need to work in Wexelblatt disaster somehow.
Oh, yeah.
No.
And
yeah,
Bucky junk.
I'll sneak it into the next show on Cantina Cast.
I'm sure you will.
All right.
Look forward to the editing that.
All right. Well, any final thoughts from either of you or on the 3 authors that we covered tonight or their works before we move on?
I'm good, sir.
I'm good.
Okay, let's talk Simpsons because this is going to be the first TV thing that we cover. And boy, again, this is another one where I was struggling because I felt maybe we'll come back and do the Simpsons a little bit more justice than what we can cover tonight. But when you think the Simpsons, let's just put this in perspective. The show started in 1989. We are now on season 30, or at least there have been 30 seasons of this show. There are 648 episodes and counting. The show is still running. It is the longest running TV show, ever. In the way they kind of categorize these things, they've got soap operas in kind of in their own little category. So it's not really competing, in terms of, length with those shows. But in terms of like primetime television, there's no show that's even close. And we'll come back to that in just a second. But this really started with Matt Groening. He was writing
Tracy Ullman. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but prior to, let me back up because prior to that, he was writing a comic strip called Life is Hell or Life in Hell. Life in Hell.
Same thing.
Yeah. And that really was it was a comic strip, kind of looked like a rabbit, I guess. He had 2 ears or he had 1 ear. I think his name Bono or something like that, or Bono or whatever. But anyways, he was running around he was very similar to like maybe a Bart Simpson. There was a lot of elements from the different characters that would eventually become The Simpsons. But he was kind of circulating this little comic strip on his own when it got the attention of a Hollywood producer who was one of the producers for the Tracy Ullman show. He reached out to him and said, hey, would you be interested in doing some animated shorts as bumpers for her show? And that's really kind of how he got into it. Well, he was so fearful that he was going to lose ownership of, Life in Hell, that he decided that, well, I don't want to really lose the ownership because I've done all these comic strips. He was starting to gain popularity. That he decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and just create my own new characters that I'm not really attached to, and they can be throwaway characters. So if they do take, if I lose the rights for them, then, it's really not that big of a deal. And so that's how he came up with the family of The Simpsons, and he called it The Simpsons at that point. So the rest from that point, as they say, is history. I remember in high school when the Tracy Ullman show came out, and maybe it was a little bit after, but I remember once she at one point, I think, filed a lawsuit against him or at least against Fox, because she felt like she was responsible for the success of The Simpsons. That lawsuit got thrown out. However, to this day, Tracy Ullman still gets a little paycheck at the end of every year or every month or whatever, based on the show's profits. So she found a way to get some money from that. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Tracy Ullman. I actually love Tracy Ullman. She's amazing. No one can probably do as many characters as her, but it's just kind of interesting.
Carrot Top, maybe.
Carrot Top, really?
Yeah, well, I was just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
someone had to be the bad guy. It might as well be me.
See, and this is why you weren't on the show for...
I know.
No.
And this is why I won't be on for the next 10 years, but that's okay.
Yep. So the main cast, Dan Castellaneta is Homer Simpson. You've got Julie Kavner playing Marge, Nancy Cartwright as Bart, Yeardley Smith playing Lisa, and then Maggie's an interesting one because they've had so many famous people come out and play Maggie Simpson, even though she doesn't really speak, except that one episode. But they've had James Earl Jones, Jodie Foster, Elizabeth Taylor, and just, again, millions and millions of other people that have come on and played her at some point, which has been pretty cool. And then we should mention the pets. They've got Santa's Little Helper, which that was a huge cartoon premiere when it came out on Fox that Christmas year. And then they've got Snowball 5 or Snowball 2 for those of you that are really diehard fans and know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so I've done enough talking. Morgan, let's start with you. The Simpsons has been around forever, so I think it's pretty safe to say that everyone grew up with The Simpsons in some way. Is that true for you? Did you guys watch this growing up in your house?
Not a lot, but yes, I definitely have seen plenty of The Simpsons from the time I was a kid till now. But, to be honest, it was never like something that I watched week to week. And
I'll say the same thing. It wasn't a show that was something we all gathered around, the TV to watch as a family. Certainly not as a family. It's not like, it wasn't like Married with Children either, right? This was something that when it was on, we'd watch it, or maybe I would watch it. But it wasn't until later on in my life when I went back and said, you know what, I'm going to really kind of just sit down and give it some attention. So, but yeah, I'm kind of with you there. We never watched it regularly here in the house at all. Now, Mike, for you, was this a show that you were catching growing up as well?
Absolutely. Actually, I found it from the Tracy Ullman show, and I liked it. I actually watched the Tracy Ullman show for the shorts of Bart Simpson and everything, and then it got its own TV show, and I was pretty excited about that. I watched in the early days and up till, I want to say, maybe the early 2000s, and then I just kind of moved on with life, and I haven't watched it since. I know it's still there because you see the thing on Fox. They had the marathon of every episode, I think a year ago or so, where they had every episode, which I couldn't sit there and watch all of that. Even if I couldn't even do that for Star Wars, but I know that's sacrilege. But so I loved it. I thought it was great originally, like those earlier years, and then as they get older, it kind of like wore off. I don't know how much they can keep going on with this thing. Like, I don't know if it's even funny anymore. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to sneak a peek at an episode or two just to see what it's all about these days. But I haven't watched it in a long time. But to answer your question, yes, I watched it early on. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was kind of controversial From what I remember, like I remember I had a Bart Simpson shirt on, and I think Homer was choking him.
Yeah,
and that was kind of a big taboo, like going into school wearing that. Like I remember, but I got away with it, so it was cool. But yeah, I remember that was fun times actually.
Yeah, and it was so, and it's a good point because really it was controversial. If you think about the time back when when this 1989. We were still very much in the era of the Cosby Show and Family Ties where, mom and dad were very loving and understanding parents and they'd sit down and talk to their children and all that. Fox was really trying to they were not a player in, primetime television at the time they are now. So they were really trying to find a way to kind of, make their stake and claim into TV programming. And so they came out with some really bold shows, one of which was the Tracy Ullman Show, one of which early on was the Simpsons. And then you got to remember they had Married with Children. That was, I mean, just completely turned everybody upside down because of the family and just, how dysfunctional that family was. You had 21 Jump Street that came out right around that same time with a very young Johnny Depp. They were trying to really be real edgy with the undercover cop at a school and kind of really touching on some stuff that no one else was trying to do. So really, this was all intentional. They were looking for this type of programming like The Simpsons and like Married with Children and those things to really kind of set themselves apart from all the stuff that we had been getting from the other three channels up until then. So, or the primary channels up until then. So it definitely makes sense that this was something that, and it worked, right? Everybody fell in love with the show. And again, why it's been running for 30 hours or for I don't even know what the math is, for 30 something years, right?
Long time.
A long time. And to your point about whether or not it's still good, I would say it probably is still relevant because it's a very satirical take on like the blue collar American family. It centers on the Simpsons family itself. Where I think they were really smart early on, and I think where this has really paid off is they don't really have a set time of when this takes place. It's so loose. There's a lot of things that don't align one way or the other. Like you'll see one thing and then later on they come back and change it, right? So there's no real true continuity, and it's almost like South Park where they're able to, the characters never really age. They don't really try to advance them anywhere, and so it gives them an opportunity to really kind of play up what's really happening at that time in pop culture or in world history and government and politics and economics, and which they do a lot of here with The Simpsons. So it's pretty smart, I think, that the formula they did. So they call it a floating timeline, the producers anyway. So that's kind of where I think it's able to kind of stay relevant with everything going on. One of the other, we should note on the guest stars, because this is where I think the show does a really good job. And we've had everybody from Leonard Nimoy. I mentioned Elizabeth Taylor, Ron Howard, James Earl Jones. They had Spinal Tap, Mel Gibson, Glenn Close, John Lovitz, Winona Ryder. Mike, there's one of your favorites. Stephen Hawking, Mark Hamill was on the show at one point.
Yep. Soon I'm going to have an appearance.
You're in line. The cast of Cheers and Michael Jackson and just on and on and on. There was just tons and tons of people that have come on and kind of made their mark and did their own little guest appearance there. I should mention that Danny Elfman, who's part of the hugely popular boy band called Oingo Boingo,
that awful band,
does the music for the opening sequence. And I want to talk about the opening sequence.
That's his crowning achievement right there.
No, Dead Man's Party is.
No.
So Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo did the intro song for it. And that's one of the cool things, really, is the intro, not the music. I know, Mike, but the fact that it changes, right? You think about 648 episodes. Every single one of them has a different intro, and it's basically three primary parts. You've got Bart Simpson, who's writing on the chalkboard because he's been punished, and that changes every show. And then you've got Lisa when she's playing her sax, and then she breaks off. She plays a different song every single time. And then there's always that final gag where the family gets into the house, they go run into the living room to watch the show, and something happens there too. So you're talking about 1, 2, 3 different things happening on 648 episodes. It's just amazing to me. It actually blows my mind that they're able to continually keep up with this and come up with something brand new every single time. The other thing that I had, I guess, is for The Simpsons really is they've done a really good job of kind of predicting the future. So there's an episode called Bart to the Future, which came out in 2000 that predicted that Trump would be president.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. And then there's another one called When You Dish Upon a Star. And that one, interesting enough, is when they kind of predict that 20th Century Fox becomes a division of Walt Disney. And so, for better or for worse, both of those have now come to fruition, which I thought was interesting. So, Mike, any other thoughts on The Simpsons or any fond memories that you have growing up aside? I mean, we can get into I'm going to get into the video games and stuff like that, but let me just pause here. Anything that you've thought of since we've been talking here?
No, but I remember probably in the 2000s, the last thing I did with The Simpsons was, because I big into philosophy, was read The Simpsons and Philosophy. That was like my first pop culture and philosophy book that I read. So it started there, and then I've kind of read a bunch of others after that, and, into the Star Wars stuff and stuff like that. But there is a lot of things you can learn with The Simpsons, at least the ones that I paid attention to in the early days. I'm sure even now, like you said, politically, philosophically, and all those other things, it's all in there if you just want to look for it. But that's about it.
Morgan, did you ever have anything Simpsons-wise, whether it was a T-shirt, video game, anything at all?
No, but I'm glad you asked that, because when I was in college, I took a mythology class as an elective, and I had to go by the professor's office one day, and I walk in. I had no idea what I was about to walk into, but every square inch of that office was covered in Simpsons memorabilia.
What, by him?
Yes,
or
by
was
him.
It a prank from one of the students?
No. It was by him. Like, there was mugs and action figures and plush dolls and posters and, I mean, just everything.
Wow.
And I was like, so you're a big Family Guy fan, huh? And he was like, yeah, well, it's a hobby. I was like, quite a hobby.
Wow. Any podcasts about The Simpsons now?
Yeah, if he could only see you now.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, there's and there are a lot of people like that. I've got two close friends. I'm just going to call them out: Aaron Johnson and Zach Grantham. Both of those guys have been huge Simpsons fans, way bigger fans than I have. And sometimes me thinking I'm a fan of it. Once those two guys got talking, I was lost. Like, they know every character, every scenario, and they can call out episode titles. And I mean, it's just amazing. And I'm not sure if either one of those follow as closely as they used to. But yeah, it's kind of in that same realm where they were just fanatical about The Simpsons. And it's fair. I think it's such a good show. So I mentioned earlier that it is the longest running TV show of all time. So it's running with 30 seasons. Mike, you want to take a guess of what the second longest running TV show is? It's an older one.
It's MASH? No, it wouldn't be MASH.
50-50, or do you want to phone a friend?
I'm going to phone a friend. Albert, what is it?
It's a Western.
Oh. Guns. No, I don't know. Gunsmoke?
Gunsmoke. Ding, ding, ding. Congratulations. Can you edit in an applause there in post-production?
I could, but I'm not going to.
All right. Well, Gunsmoke, yes, is in second place with 20 seasons long. It is, but it's a three-way tie. So in that three-way tie with second is Gunsmoke, Law and Order.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then, shocker, Law and Order SVU is in third place as well, or second place, I guess. Yeah. Lassie is number 4, I guess. Let's see, 1, 2, I can't count here. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Lassie is 18 seasons. Family Guy, 17 seasons. NCIS, 16 seasons. CSI Crime Scene is 15 seasons.
The Basement Podcast, 20,000 seasons.
Not yet.
So
not yet. ER is next with 15 as well. I love that show. And we've got the Jack Benny program with 15 seasons. That was back in your time, Mike. American Dad, 15 seasons. Here's one for everybody. Grey's Anatomy, 15 seasons.
I've never watched a single episode of that.
No Grey's Anatomy fans. I can keep going here. Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, 14. Bonanza, 14. American Circle Theater. I don't even know what that is. 14.
I don't even want to know what that is.
Then we get into the primetime soaps like Dallas, Knots Landing. Those are both at 14. Criminal Minds at 14. You guys a Criminal Minds fan?
I was originally, but then I lost it when the mother got shot and killed, and I kind of was like,
spoilers.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, sorry. Oh,
well. Supernatural. Anybody watch that?
No.
I've seen a little bit of that. Yeah, that has been
seasons.
on for a long time, or was on. Is it off now?
I don't know. Hopefully. Just joking. King of the Hill, 14 seasons.
That was a good one.
That's a good one. I know all those guys too. They live right down the street from me.
Yeah.
My Three Sons, 14 seasons. And then finally, and this is the top 20, I should have mentioned that. The Big Bang Theory is at 12 seasons, which was surprising.
5 years ago.
I did not think that show has been on that long.
I know, but it's really not even that funny.
I've never seen it.
It's actually insulting to geeks, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
I still watch it though because I got nothing else to do on a Thursday.
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes. I haven't mind. I don't mind it. Like, there's been some cool stuff. I think they play too heavily, in my opinion, on DC and Star Trek. But that's just me. I'd rather they go Marvel and Star Wars. But whatever.
Well, yeah, it's true.
All right, so let's talk about the legacy of the Simpsons, and I don't even know where to start. Because it's. I mean,
well, my favorite character is Groundskeeper Willie. He's the best. I'm just gonna say that. I just want to get that out there. He's the best.
He's the best.
Yeah, I love him. He's my favorite.
I like, what's his name? Comic book.
The comic book guy?
Yeah, I forget his name now. Yeah,
I think that's actually his name, comic book guy. I don't know.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Or is it Sweatpants? No,
I don't know. He was just somebody I aspired to be at some point in my life.
I'm sure you. Well, that's why you got the basement here.
Yep. But The Simpsons has got comics, board games, video games. They had a feature film at one point. They've got a Simpsons Ride. And who could ever forget Do the Bartman? Do you guys remember Do the Bartman?
Yeah, I remember that.
Morgan, do you know what we're talking about here?
No, I don't.
She's lucky.
Well, you're lucky. You're lucky, one, because you haven't heard it or seen it, and two, because I'm going to tell you all about it right now. So the Bartman, Do the Bartman is actually a song from 1990, and it came out on the Simpsons Sing the Blues album, which features Michael Jackson singing the chorus. So while this song is going on, it's Bart Simpson basically rapping, and then when they get to the chorus, there's a part in there where he goes, "Everybody do the Bartman," and kind of goes on and on, right?
Okay.
Please don't sing again.
Yeah, well, hold on.
Don't do that.
I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Oh, great.
So the music, it's interesting. So the video for this, if you get a chance, go watch the music video. It's on YouTube.
Don't do it.
For it. It's actually directed by Brad Bird. And yes, that is the same Brad Bird that would go on to direct The Iron Giant, which, heavily influenced Ready Player One.
I do like The Iron Giant.
He also directed The Incredibles, Ratatouille, Incredibles 2. He's the guy at Pixar that's been cranking these out. So This was obviously early on in his career, but he directed that video. It's kind of cool because Bart Simpson does the Running Man at one point, right? So that's pretty hot. Maybe not. Michael Jackson was a huge fan of this show. In fact, he was in season 3 in an episode called Stark Raving Dad. He's listed as John J. Smith. But he actually wrote the song for that episode, Happy Birthday, Lisa.
Wasn't he the imposter, Michael Jackson, if I remember right? Or am I not remembering that right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fine. So anyways, if you get a chance, go watch Do the Bartman. It's worth watching maybe at least once in your lifetime. Add it to your bucket list. Get it over with.
Oh, I'm going to do it when we get done.
Yeah, thank you.
Do it. Don't waste.
I'm a horrible influence. Please go watch it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't waste your time.
I guess the other thing, I don't know. I was going to talk about the actual ride, the Simpsons ride, and that's over at is it Universal Studios?
Yes, I've always wanted to go there to do that. I went way before that.
To ride the ride?
No, I went to ride the ride to see it.
Okay,
it looks so cool.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty popular. I think it's still there. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I forget now if it is or not. But I know when it came out, it was a pretty big deal that they had that ride on there. So yeah, I mean, their legacy is forever, right? And who knows when this thing's going to end, and it'll be a sad day when it does. But all right, I guess any final thoughts on Simpsons from you, Morgan?
No.
All right, I got a question then for both of you. Is this the greatest show of all time?
No.
All right, next question. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So the reason I asked that is because it does come up a lot when you look at greatest shows of all time lists. It usually is up there. In some lists, in some capacity, whether it's a top 5, top 3, whatever. It ranks up pretty high up there. And I think if you have that many episodes,
no Knight Rider.
if you've got 648 episodes and 30 seasons, it's a good chance that there's enough content in there for people to make a good case that this is, one of the greatest of all time. So I would say that it probably is one of the greatest of all times. I don't know if it is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. I think I've got other shows that I would put up there, but I'm going to put you on the spot, Morgan. If you had to pick the greatest TV show of all time, the one that Morgan Marshall just loves to watch, would watch anytime, any day of the week, stranded on an island, you can only take one TV show with you. What are you taking on the island?
Oh, man. Okay. Y'all are not going to be able to relate to this.
What is it?
It would be Gilmore Girls.
Gilmore Girls? Yes. Wait a minute.
I totally...
That's Mike.
I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Really?
No, it's not mine. No way, Jose. No.
All right, hold on here. Let me look up Gilmore Girls.
I started watching that show as a kid because I want to say it started in like 2001, maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, that's about right. It says it started in 2000, October 5th, 2000 on the WB, which is a channel I do not watch.
Yeah, so I was a little too young for the first couple of seasons, but they started showing reruns on ABC Family, and I would watch it in the afternoon after school, and then I caught up with it eventually, and it's just one of my favorite shows. I love it. Me and my mom, we watched the whole series together. I've seen it 1,000,000 times.
Really? Did you watch? So, and trust me, I am no Gilmore Girls fan, or actually, I'm not a fan because I've never seen the show. But as I'm reading this, it says that they did a 4-part miniseries called Gilmore Girls a year later on Netflix in 2016. Did you watch that as well?
Oh, yeah. I literally watched it the second it was available. Like, wow. I stayed up until 3 a.m. because it came out Pacific time, midnight Pacific time. So I had to stay up till 3 a.m. After Thanksgiving. And yeah. I watched it until about 8 a.m. because each episode was an hour and a half long.
So this has a huge following. I know it does. I don't watch the show, but I know there are a lot of people that like this show. So, I don't even know what the premise is, but that's great. Mike, I'm going to guess Gilmore Girls is not your show that you would take to the island, but what if you had to take one show, what would it be?
Northern Exposure.
What?
Yeah. I love that show.
How many seasons does that run?
There's like 6.
Do you guys have these like Blu-ray, DVD, VHS?
I had them on DVD back in the day. I don't have them now. Strangely, you can't get anything, like it's not streaming or anything like that, but there might be a reboot in the works, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Interesting.
And a lot of it has to do with Chris in the Morning, the DJ guy, the guy that was behind the microphone. He was an influence on my podcasting career, as you could tell. But he's into philosophy and all that other stuff, and it was kind of a gateway into all that stuff for me as well. So that's why I kind of like the show. It's kind of a show that makes you look at yourself, I guess. But anyway.
Yeah. All right.
I bet yours is probably something with Oingo Boingo in it or something.
No, it's not
awful,
Oingo Boingo.
Terrible, or Star Trek-ish.
I think I've mentioned before on this show my favorite TV show of all time.
Knight Rider.
No. It's actually not even from the 80s. Nope, not from the 80s. Believe it or not.
Oh.
Morgan, do you want to take a guess?
I don't know. Masters of the Universe.
Oh, no. That show's terrible.
You don't watch that every night before you go to bed?
No, that's Mike, but we'll come back to that in a minute here.
I don't watch that every night.
No. So if I had to strand on an island, I can only bring one TV show. Ironically, it would probably be Lost.
The He-Man Christmas special. No?
No, it's Lost.
That's a controversial decision there.
It is. I know it is, especially when you start talking about the ending. But,
you waste all that time for what?
At some point...
Kind of like going from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. Same thing. Oh, I had to... Sorry. Shut up.
At some point, I will do a podcast on Lost. I've already committed to that. So, but that would be the show I take.
I don't advise that, sir. But anyway.
You'll have to edit it. So, all right.
Great.
I will say, since you've never seen Gilmore Girls, you should give it a shot, because if Mike has seen it, he can tell you it is chock full of pop culture references.
Really?
That's their thing.
Much better time with the Gilmore Girls than Lost. I'll say that.
Okay, come on.
It's a very quick-witted show.
All right, maybe I'll give it a shot here. It's probably only fair given the amount of punishment I put you guys through in doing the homework assignment. So All right. So speaking of TV shows, let's talk a little bit Star Trek Enterprise.
Why?
Because it was mentioned in the novel. And, we've done a lot of Star Wars or Star Trek coverage here on the show so far.
Sadly, and I cringe every time I edit it. No, I'm only kidding. It's not the next generation stuff. You know me. That's my wheelhouse. But anyway.
Yeah. So this was I guess one of the more recent ones from 2001, 2005. It is the prequel to Star Trek, the original series. So it actually takes place before that. It aired on UPN back in September 26, 2001. It starred Scott Bakula as Captain Jonathan Archer, Jolene Blaylock as Science Officer T'Pol, Connor Trinier as Chief Engineer Charles Trip Tucker, Dominic Keating as Tactical Officer Malcolm Reed, Linda Park. I had Hoshi Sato. There's a number of folks on here. I don't want to read every one of these guys, but
I suddenly want to watch Quantum Leap.
Oh, I know, right?
I'd rather watch that. Can we talk about that? That's much better.
I know. I'm burying the lead on this story, to be honest. But yeah, because Scott Bakula, I'm like, yeah, all right, that's a Quantum Leap guy. But no, we can't. Maybe another show.
He's good in the New Orleans show, that NCIS New Orleans. He's not bad in that. But I still see him as Quantum Leap, which was a great show. I love that show, by the way.
Do you guys want to talk Quantum Leap?
Well, it was a better show than the Enterprise. I mean, I tried to get into the Enterprise. I remember when it came out, and of course, the attraction was Scott, because obviously Quantum Leap and everything. I'm like, all right, I'll check this out. And I didn't mind the original Star Trek, but I'm the next generation kind of guy, and it just was, it just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah. Morgan, did you watch the show Star Trek Enterprise?
I watched it for the homework. I'd never seen it before. I've only ever seen
What did you think?
Star Trek and Next Generation.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was I didn't really care for it all that much, to be honest. I mean, to see some of the prequel things come into play, that was cool, but it was a little slow for me.
Yeah. So in all honesty, I'd never had seen the show prior to this show and doing the homework myself. And it was a little slow. I can see where I know it got a lot of criticisms, although I know we have people like Stargate Pioneer and Crowley that are part of, they hang out with us on Discord all day long. I think both of them are fans of the show for at least certain aspects and elements of the show. So I think there's stuff there, for the really truly hardcore fans, or even maybe just the casual fans if you look for it. But it wasn't a show that I remember, got a lot of praise, right or wrong. I'm not justifying that one way or the other. I don't think I watched enough to really formulate an honest opinion, objective opinion about the show. So,
true.
It does take place right after the events of Star Trek First Contact, which I thought was great because that's one of my favorite Star Trek movies from the original stuff. So yeah. All right, so let's talk about Ziggy from Quantum Leap. You guys big fans of Ziggy? What do you mean? Yeah, that's like that's what everybody wanted. Everybody wanted that little thing that he was punching away on all day long.
I know.
All right. Well, we'll come back and talk Quantum Leap another time. All right, let's talk about Schoolhouse Rock, because this one's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Schoolhouse Rock, 1973 to 1996. For the homework,
I wish they still did it.
Yeah, well,
to be honest.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long since they've done one, to be honest. But for the homework, I asked you guys to watch 3 is a Magic Number, Conjunction Junction, and I'm
my
Just a
personal
Bill.
favorite. That's my favorite one.
Yeah,
I like that one. That's my favorite.
That one annoys me.
Oh, come on, that's a great one. I love that one.
That one has annoyed me since I was a child.
I'm so posted on my Instagram, the Bill.
Yeah, I'm Just a Bill.
Now, when
Bill.
I think Schoolhouse Rock, I think of I'm Just a Bill. That's immediately where my mind goes.
Yeah, I would say it's close.
I think that's the most popular one. I think
it is. I think I have nothing to prove otherwise, but.
Well, Conjunction Junction's pretty popular too. I mean, that was pretty catchy. Yeah,
I picked the 3 that I remembered the most, and that's why I asked you guys to watch these. The other one that I didn't put in there was Ollie, 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 get your adverbs here. You guys remember?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, Ollie, 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 get your adverbs here.
Don't sing again. Why are you singing again?
I'm sorry, it's Lolly, 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 not Ollie.
Oh.
Anyways,
okay.
But those are probably the biggest 3, at least, and there's a ton of these guys. I mean, so for those of you that don't know, this essentially was an education type show masked under animation and musical shorts and songs. These were kind of like music videos before MTV was out. They aired on ABC during Saturday morning cartoon programming, started in 1973, and most of them only ran for like 3 minutes in length. So they were kind of bumpers. They were squeezed in right before the main programming and maybe sometimes, after commercials or in between commercial breaks.
It was like He-Man and the Master of the Universe moral lesson at the end of the episode because, we couldn't make a cartoon to just sell toys.
Right.
Because that would be so wrong.
Yeah, and they were trying to sell, education here, I guess, if you will.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, actually, it worked.
Yeah, no, it did. I mean, we'll come back to that in a second. They started in the 70s, and at least in the 70s, there were only 4 categories. There was multiplication, grammar, there was some on America, and then there was some on science. And then later on, there was kind of this resurgence in the 90s, and we'll touch on that because I've got some notes there too, but there was a resurgence of this in the 90s, and when that came out, it became suddenly popular all over again,
Mm-hmm.
and then they created some new categories, so they added money rock and earth rock, and so one was focused around finance, economics, that kind of thing, and the other one was focused on earth, and really this was kind of, that's when I think, at least for us as Americans, really started becoming more, conscious about the environment and what we were doing to the earth, that kind of thing. And so they were really trying to play on that. And so they came up with those 2 new categories. It's interesting because the idea of this whole premise of Schoolhouse Rock came from a co-chairman of an ad agency. He said that his kids knew, every Rolling Stone lyric, but they couldn't memorize their timetables. And so he had this idea of, well, let me just put this education stuff to music, throw it in front of kids where they're sitting every morning on Saturday, and hopefully some of this stuff will stick. I don't know that I learned a single thing from these program shows. I like the songs, and that's what I remember. The songs are super catchy, but to be honest, as a kid, I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together and going, oh, really? I'm learning how to multiply here, or I'm learning what an adverb is, or I'm learning what a conjunction is. I was just singing the stinking songs, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I was too. And then you'd move on to the Bugs Bunny cartoon, and I'd forget about it. So
yeah.
So if
but
you,
it
I
teased
guess
the parents were happy. Hey, they're learning something. No, we're not. But anyway.
Yeah, and interesting. These guys, all 3 of the ones that at least I picked. Magic number 3 is a magic number is 1973. Conjunction Junction was in 1973, and then I'm Just a Bill was in 1976. So right around that time,
Good year.
they had a good run there in terms of what they were cranking out. So I guess we've already answered the question, but which is your favorite? So Morgan, I'm Conjunction Junction.
No.
Oh, just the Bill.
Yeah, just the Bill. I'd never heard of 3 is the magic number before I read Ready Player One. I don't know if I heard that one and I don't remember it, but I feel like it's the first time I ever heard about it.
Yeah, so the guy that sings that is Bob Doro, but there's a really great version for anyone interested. Do you guys remember
Don't
a
bring
band?
Up Blind Melon.
Do you remember Blind Melon?
Yeah, I hate them.
Well, I love them.
I mean,
but no surprise.
If you listen to the show, you think I hate everything, but I really don't. I
Yeah.
swear. I just want to get that clear.
He hates everything I like. That's how it works.
Well, yeah, that is true because most stuff you like are horrible. But anyway,
Morgan, have you heard of Blind Melon before?
No, I have not.
Okay. So Blind Melon,
lucky you.
Well, I won't get off into too big of a tirade here about Blind Melon, but basically they were kind of a rock band out of California.
That's questionable, but
yeah. Well, they started off as a rock band, and their biggest song was "No Rain."
Bumblebee thing.
Yeah, and which was hugely popular. Don't listen to Mike. It was insanely popular at the time.
But it was annoying. Oh.
And unfortunately, there was the lead singer died at some point, and they had a couple albums that came out, and they've got a following, but they never really kind of rose to probably the levels they could have had they obviously all stayed alive. But anyways, during the 90s,
don't do drugs, kids. That's the lesson.
Yeah, they died of drugs, but they did a version of 3 is a magic number, and if you get a chance, go listen to it. I think it's actually a really good version. His voice is like
shocked by that.
His voice is super perfect, and I think it kind of it's very similar to Bob Doro, the original singer, in a lot of different ways. So that particular song was actually released. So when I mentioned earlier, there was that resurgence kind of in the 90s. There was an album called Schoolhouse Rocks, and that was a collection of cover songs by different bands that were hugely popular at the time. So you got 3 is a Magic Number by Blind Melon. You got I'm Just a Bill by a band called Deluxe Folk Implosion. So they're kind of a one-hit wonder, but they did that song.
They were better than Blind Melon.
Do you guys remember Better Than Ezra?
Oh, yeah. I love Better Than Ezra.
Oh, there you go. Do you remember them, Morgan?
No. When
right.
when did they make music?
Yeah, this is all early 90s. Early 90s.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I was listening to Barney.
You've said that before on the show too.
I was too at that time.
Yeah. But we all were.
Strangely, years later I would be again, but that's beside the point. All right.
So Better Than Ezra, their big song was they had 2 really.
Sitting Around the House.
No,
blah,
Good.
Blah, blah. Yeah, Good.
Yeah. That's the name of the song. And Desperately Wanting.
Yep, that was a good one.
That was a pretty big one. Anyways, they did Conjunction Junction. And then the one I mentioned early, Lolly Lolly, Get Your Adverbs Here, that was done by another band that was kind of popular at the time, but didn't really go on to do a whole lot, to be honest, and that's Buffalo Tom. So there are other bands. Those are kind of the bigger ones that were on there. There was a lot of other bands on there, but it's an interesting album, and it's kind of a sign of the times, and people were really kind of feeling nostalgic about Schoolhouse Rock when that kind of came out. So
yeah, that's really cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, Mike. Anything else? Anything you want to add to Schoolhouse Rock here?
Nope. I'm just a Bill. That's it.
You're just a Mike. Yep, and Morgan, thanks for pointing out we're actually going to come back and touch on 3 is a Magic Number a little bit later because it does make an appearance later on in the novel when the 3 of them are trying to open up the gate. So, all right. Well, let's talk about one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid.
I don't know why, but I'm not surprised.
1965's Gamera. So the homework here was to watch Gamera versus Zigra. It's a 1971 film. But before we talk about that, if for those of you that are not familiar with Gamera, he is basically a giant turtle kaiju
he's a turtle Godzilla
who first appeared in 1965 in a movie called Gamera.
Who plays bongos with fish.
Yep. Later, it was re-edited when it came out into America called Gamera the Invincible. He's basically a prehistoric turtle. He's got these tusks. He's a turtle with teeth. He's got a shell. He could walk on 2 legs or he could walk on 4 legs. He could fly. All he would do is retract his legs into a shell and then shoot fire out of his butt, basically. It was coming out of the legs.
Blue fire, by the way.
Blue fire at that. And he ate a healthy diet of like fire, coal, magma, petroleum-based products like Vaseline, and just about anything that was flammable. So if that's not enough to get your attention...
he sounds like a fun guy to hang around with.
Yeah, really, a flatulent guy to hang around with. The movie was released by a film company called Daiei, and honestly, it was really an attempt to capitalize on the hugely successful Godzilla movies at the time that were being released by Toho. So this was a money grab. They were trying to figure out, we got to get in on this Godzilla thing. It's hugely popular right now. What can we do? Oh, let's create a turtle. And the first 2 movies that came out, they were actually trying to really go after a very serious kind of tone, similar to maybe even like the first Godzilla movie. They got a little hokey once they got into the 60s. But initially, the Godzilla movies were trying to, really convey a serious message of, hey, this is what happens with, nuclear power. And if we're not responsible for it, this is, something that could happen, I guess. And then by the time they got to the 3rd Gamera movie, the wheels just fell off the bus. Suddenly,
the wheels fell off the bus on this one, pal.
Yeah, we're well up. Yeah, we're done. There's no wheels at all when we get to Gamera versus Zigra. But after the 3rd movie, Gamera War of the Monsters, he took on this moniker of the friend of all children, which is kind of creepy, but whatever. We'll talk about that. And then from that movie, so between 1965 and 1980, the movies were super low production, very low production value. There was hardly any influences on the plot, the character, the storyline. In fact, some of the stories during this time, they just reused footage from previous movies, like super lazy. And probably the most egregious was coming in 1980 when they did Gamera Super Monster. Not only did they use footage from previous Gamera movies, but they had the audacity to use footage from Spaceship Battleship Yamato. So we covered that in a couple episodes on the Star Blazers episode, but they actually took footage from something completely different and mixed it in just to kind of add time and I don't know, ride the wave of the popularity of Space Battleship Yamato at the time. So, and I should mention they also took footage from another program called Galaxy Express 999. So they had no shame about how they were putting these shows together, and they were really just targeted towards kids. They were trying to win them over with saying, look, this is a big turtle and he's friendly and he's a friend to all the children. Oh, look, here's Star Blazers, and oh, look, here's Galaxy Express 1990 or 999. You know what these guys are. It was kind of a train wreck all the way through. So Morgan, I know you said you didn't watch the movie, but I guess, had you heard of Gamera prior to this book or even prior to the homework assignment tonight?
No, never.
Does this sound like something you would watch though?
Probably not, to be honest. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
You can say no. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Probably not.
Don't be friendly. It's okay to shatter his dreams in his hopes. Yeah. I do it all the time. It's okay.
It's really okay. This is one of those that even I, as much as I love Gamera, I watch these things and I'm just shaking my head going, oh. And we'll talk about Mystery Science Theater in a second. But so, Mike, did you get it? Did you actually force yourself to watch this movie?
I did, because as I was saying before we get on air here, I said, it's one of those things, like I remember like when they had TV Land or whatever was running like the Dukes of Hazzard and like all those things. And I'm like, oh, I'll check it out. You know, this is, I want to say the early 2000s or whatever. And I watched it. I'm like, why did I like this as a kid? I don't know why. And so today I get excited. I'm like, oh, Gamera. I remember loving Gamera as a kid. I had a toy. Yeah, we all did. That. Great. This is going to be great. It's like Godzilla stuff. It's great. And, you know, I'm getting hyped up for the Godzilla, the King of All Monsters there. So I clicked this on YouTube and I'm like, what the hell happened here? Like, why did I even, like, 7-year-old Mike, I want to go back in time and slap him. What are you watching this for?
Yeah.
This is awful. Want to be Godzilla stuff. What are you doing? I don't know. It was bad. Like, so, it was
I got to ask
really
you then,
bad.
So since you watched the movie, has your opinion of SeaWorld changed because of it?
No, that wasn't my focus. The focus was the creepy kids, the bad American accents that they were trying to do. It was just, and then the like effects were just awful.
Yeah,
like it was bad. Just, even for that time period, I'm like, eek.
Yeah, and what I was poking fun at is at the beginning of the movie. It actually, part of the movie takes place at SeaWorld of Kamigawa, which was just bizarre that they included that in the movie. But you know, as you watch it, you understand why. But
then the guy says, "Oh, your wife's in New York." Like, what? Huh?
I don't know.
Why?
That whole intro when they're talking there, is, if that's what you're referring to, is just it's really awkward.
And the whole movie is awkward.
So let me just say this. If you're not a fan of Gamera and you've heard this now and you're like, I would never watch that, do yourself a favor. Go find the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes where they covered a lot of them. So those of you that are not familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000, it's basically a program that came out in, let me see, early, like mid-90s, early 2000s. And it really involves a guy with these two robots. They sit in front of these old crappy movies and they just make fun of them the whole time. They just riff on them the entire time. And they did a number of Godzilla movies, which I'm trying to remember. I think they did a total of 5 movies. And if you can find season 3, some of these are on YouTube, by the way, so you don't need to pay for anything. But if you really want to watch Gamera and get a really different perspective and a much funnier experience, even more than just watching how bad they are, go listen to the Mystery Science Theater 1000. It's some of the best stuff that they did. And again, they did 5 of these movies all together. So, but yeah, it's amazing. So that's one way to watch these. I guess, Mike, I'm going to give you a real easy answer, a question here to answer: Gamera or Godzilla? Which one?
Oh, for God's sake! You even asking me that?
Hold on, wait.
Okay,
you haven't heard the question yet.
All right.
If you put both of them in a 500-foot aquarium, who comes out ahead and why?
Godzilla.
Are you sure about that? 50-50 or phone a friend?
I'm 100% sure on that.
All right.
I disagree.
Okay.
She's never seen it. She's disagreeing.
Yeah, but I heard the description. I heard the description of who Gamera is.
Yeah. It was those retracting legs, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a turtle. I mean, he's meant to be in water. Godzilla is huge, and I don't know how much he weighs, but I know he weighs a lot. And I think he would get a little bogged down in the water.
There you go. Challenge accepted. Throwing down the gauntlet.
Atomic breath. End of story.
Oh.
It's over.
But water.
That's it. Yeah.
Would it work in water?
No. Yeah, I think so. I'm going with that. Albert, what is your answer? Because I know you're itching to counter me.
I don't know.
Oh, you backing out. All right. Well, at least Morgan came to fight. You, on the other hand, you're just going to walk away. Oh, I'm going to duck out of it.
You're talking about like two of my like childhood idols. I can't pick. This is like picking
Godzilla
between mom and dad.
King of all monsters, dude. I mean, come on.
Well, maybe in the Godzilla world he is, but in the Gamera world, Gamera is the king of all monsters.
Gamera is just weird. It's just weird. Like he had too many bears or something, and he's just drinking Vaseline or whatever. I don't know what he's doing. He's just crazy creature. Although I liked him as a kid. I remember that, and I had the toy. So
yeah. I mean, I grew up with him. So just to kind of end this whole thing with Gamera, there were,
thank goodness,
there were Gamera movies that came out after 1980. In fact, here's where it gets very interesting. The Gamera movies that were released between 1995 and 1999 were arguably much better than the Godzilla movies that were coming out, because really they had better stories, better characters. The practical effects were better than the Godzilla, and this is only my personal opinion of it. At that time, and if you follow Godzilla, you may have a different perspective. But for me, at the time when I was watching these things, and we were having to import a lot of this stuff from Japan, and a lot of it was subtitled because we didn't have the dub versions yet. But it felt like Godzilla, the franchise, had just kind of mailed it in at this point. And the Gamera movies were really where everybody was going to, because they actually had plot lines, and they actually had good stories and characters. It was almost like a complete role reversal of where they kind of started off with. Even the tokusatsu was like way better, even though than the Godzilla stuff, like the actual effects and the costumes and the characters themselves. So
correct me if I'm wrong, Albert.
Yeah,
because it's been a while with my whole Godzilla thing and all that stuff. They never fought, right? I assume they never squared off, right?
No, I don't know that they actually ever fought, because they're two different different franchises, yeah. And they were always competing with one another. I
just wasn't sure if they had the. See, that would be pretty cool if they could squeeze that in the new Godzilla movie. That would be cool, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
I doubt it'll happen. But
there are a lot of even back like in the 90s, there were fans that were putting together stuff like that. They were splicing footages from two different. From a Godzilla movie and a Gamera movie, but to my knowledge, I don't think they've ever done it. There's a lot of fanboy movies that were made from it, but yeah, it was almost kind of like, when you say, well, Marvel and DC are never going to have a team up, and they eventually did, but for the longest time that was unheard of. That would never happen, right? That's kind of what maybe the situation here. So I guess finally in 2006 was the last time that we heard that they were going to do a Gamera movie. They actually had it's always rumored every year. It seems like someone comes out and says, oh yeah, they're, talking about rebooting Gamera here sooner or later. There was one moment where, and I forget how long ago it was a few years back now, where they had, at one of the Comic-Cons, it may have been New York Comic-Con, but someone previewed or debuted some footage of, a new Gamera movie that was supposedly in the works. And you can find it on YouTube. It's actually really cool looking. It's all CGI for the most part, which would have been the first time that they used CGI and got away from the costumes. But turns out that actually never came out. It wasn't really a movie. It was years later that we found out that it was really just some test footage that they were doing and trying to stir up some interest in the movie. So who knows? Maybe we'll get a Gamera movie at some point. Maybe with the more recent Godzilla movies and that MonsterVerse that Legendary's doing, and is it Warner Brothers that's doing those?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So who knows? This may be those may be the catalyst for someone to go back and say, you know what? Let's fire up Gamera once again. Get the butt flaming. So, all right. Well, we'll move on from Gamera, and let's talk about some directors real quick. I want to talk about Stanley Kubrick because we've already touched on him a little bit with The Shining. But I asked you guys just to kind of give me your favorite Stanley Kubrick film. And Morgan, I'll start with you. What's your experience been with Stanley Kubrick? And if you had to pick one film to watch from him as your call out as your favorite, what would that be?
Okay. I've seen a few different films. Obviously The Shining, Full Metal Jacket.
Oh yeah, it's a great one.
2001 Space Odyssey. But I think my favorite is probably Lolita.
Oh, that's an interesting choice. So was that a movie that you've seen like growing up, or was it later on in life that you saw that?
I definitely did not see it growing up. The first time I watched it was a few years ago. One of my guilty pleasure TV shows is Pretty Little Liars.
Gilmore Girls. Oh, sorry.
No, Gilmore Girls is not a guilty pleasure. I feel no guilt over that. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a pleasure, right?
Yeah. But Pretty Little Liars, the creator of that show is like obsessed with Lolita and a bunch of other like black and white movies. And I was curious about it because she referenced it so much. So I watched it, and I mean, it's a messed up story, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's and the whole premise of somebody, it's very taboo and controversial to begin with, right?
Yeah, that's why it's so interesting, is because it's like, I can't believe they actually made a movie like that.
Yeah, well, if you're going to tap anyone to go direct something like that, you're in pretty good hands with Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think I've seen that movie. It's been years since I've seen it. I know Peter Sellers is in it, but I forget now who all else is in it. But it's I remember liking the movie quite a bit. I've actually never read the novel, which I think it's based on a novel, if I'm not mistaken. But interesting choice. Mike, I'm going to guess. Full Metal Jacket.
No.
Really?
It was, but strangely, and I don't really know why, and maybe because it's his last film, but Eyes Wide Shut. I don't know why, because I'm not a big Tom Cruise guy.
It's but that movie is pretty good.
But I think it's the whole secret society and how things are connected and all that stuff. But Full Metal Jacket, when they're in boot camp, that was my favorite. Nothing gets better than that. The Shining, of course, Clockwork Orange, Lolita gets an honorable mention as well, and Doctor Strange, Spotted. You could go on and on. He's like done a million things, more than I even realized when I was looking some stuff up. I'm like, oh, really? Wow. I can't believe that he did this, that, and the other, and I just didn't even realize it. But I would say Eyes Wide Shut is probably my favorite.
Yeah, that is a great one. In fact, I think all of us. This one was really hard because there are like you said, there are a lot of movies that he's done, and all of them have been just amazing, I think. And I should mention he did pass in 1999 at the ripe old age of 71. And so you think about somebody with a 71-year career who there's quite a lot of content there or at least works that he's done.
I think even like and what even sells Eyes Wide Shut is the fact that like the studio wanted him to edit, I don't know, 20 minutes or something, and he being him, like Lucas, didn't want to do anything like that. And when he died, it was edited, and nobody knows what that footage is or something. So
wow.
I don't know. There's a whole bunch of like YouTube videos, and of course I'm into whole conspiracy stuff. I don't believe in any of it, but it's just a mild curiosity, so I'll get into it and check these things out for my own amusement. And some of the stuff that comes up, I think that kind of appeals to me now. But Full Metal Jacket's still pretty darn good. But I like Eyes Wide Shut. I think because it's his last film. It's like his last statement, I guess you could say. So I don't know. That's just my take.
Yeah. I've got Full Metal Jacket down as one of my favorites. Not my favorite, but one of my favorites. The Shining was another one too that I had down, and I should mention this because The Shining. One of the things that I've always liked about The Shining is the cinematography itself, and a lot of it is because he was one of the very first directors at that time in 1976 that actually used the Steadicam. So the Steadicam is a camera that we're all well aware of. We hear it all the time now, and we see it it's used in every single movie, even to this day. But back then in 1976, that was the first year that movies actually used the Steadicam. So you had movies like The Shining, Rocky was another one, Marathon Man. But if you watch those movies, it was a big change in how cinematography was because of the Steadicam. So, and he was really one of these proponents of using the latest and greatest. He was kind of an avant-garde in terms of using the latest technology for his movies and really try to incorporate that into his work. So he kind of had that aspect of him as well as just being a natural talent when it came to directing and when it came to especially cinematography, which I think he's a better cinematographer than he is maybe a director. But I guess if so, all that said, I think one of the movie that is forefront for me was Stanley Kubrick is 2001, and that's probably no surprise because I think SP and I covered the 2001 series on an earlier episode. But that movie is just a movie that I can pop in. It doesn't matter how tired I am, doesn't matter how grumpy I am, sad, happy, whatever. I can watch that movie any time of the day, no matter what. And I know it's kind of a bore for a lot of people, but it's about the cinematography, it's about the pacing and the setting of the frame, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous movie to watch. And on top of it, I think it's got a great story behind it with Arthur C. Clarke. So that's my favorite. Any other honorable mentions you guys want to throw out there? Morgan, do you have anything beyond Lolita? Anything else there?
I was gonna say that Full Metal Jacket is one of my favorites, but to be honest, I think it's a great movie. Don't get me wrong, but I think it sticks in my mind so much because, like, when I've watched that movie, I just can't look away from it. Like, it's so dark, but you can't look away.
Full Metal Jacket?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very dark
movie. It is super dark, especially in my father, much like yours, Mike, I think, were both in Vietnam. And
Marines, both, right?
Yeah.
My dad was a Marine.
He was a Marine.
Yep.
And I remember watching that movie with him, and I was a little bit older when that movie came out, but we actually sat down and watched that movie together. And that movie had an impact on him. Like, it affected him emotionally. So, there are some very, I'm not going to say everyone went through what Pyle did in there, but yeah, he was telling me, there were some people that just broke down and cracked and went completely nuts.
My dad couldn't watch it. My dad won't watch a lot of that stuff. No, he won't. He can't get into that, which is ironic because when I was younger, we used to watch old westerns and war movies.
Yeah,
but
naval war movies.
Yeah, but that was John Wayne stuff. It wasn't like when you get into Kubrick and then beyond, Saving Private Ryan, where it's like real. He can't get into any of that. He doesn't even like talking about any of that stuff. He's got to drink his Southern Comfort and then tell me what the hell happened, and then it's pretty intense. I'll leave it at that. But.
Yeah, and I think you and I spoke about that at one point. But the same thing with my father. For the longest time growing up, he told me he flew helicopters, or he was a mechanic. Sorry, he was a mechanic and worked on helicopters, and that was what I thought Dad did. Let me back up. One, he never told me he was in the Vietnam War. He told me he was in the military. He told me he was in the Marine Corps. When I would ask him, "Were you in the Vietnam War?" he would say no. It wasn't until I got older that I started kind of doing the math, and I'm thinking, "There's no way you could have been in the military as a Marine during the time." And not been in the Vietnam War. And later on, he confessed that, he was in the war, but he was just a mechanic. Years later, even after that, he finally came out and told me that he had was a helicopter pilot. And at one point, he would, rotate on the gunner position as well. And he unfortunately did some really horrible things that he was asked to do out there in the war. And he was actually embarrassed and ashamed to some extent to kind of talk about those things to me as a kid, because he thought I would think less of him because of it. So anyways, it's the movie itself, just to kind of take it back to Full Metal Jacket, is an amazing movie. There's a lot of realism in the movie, and especially when you kind of talk to some of the old vets, like our fathers, they can tell you that some of that stuff really, really did happen, and those emotions are real. So, well, let's sober up. Let's sober up. Let's talk about some music. So the music I had here was let's start with "They Might Be Giants." And so, Mike, I know you've got some interesting tastes in music, and
this is one of the few that we agree on, Albert.
Really?
Yes.
All right. Well, this is good. In fact, actually, I should apologize. This is the only one I think that I give you guys for homework. They Might Be Giants. Morgan, were you a fan of these guys ever growing up?
No, I honestly
had heard of them. I'd never heard of them?
I think that the song Istanbul, I think that I have heard that before. It sounds so familiar, and I actually like it.
It was in Animaniacs, or was that Birdhouse in this? I can't remember which one it was, but anyway.
It was in a cartoon.
Yes.
Oh, well, maybe that is what I've heard it in. But there were a couple of other songs that I liked, but to be honest, it's just not my jam.
That's fine. Yeah. So the homework on this one was I wanted you guys to listen to the album Then, which was kind of a collection of all of their greatest hits, or some of the biggest songs. And then I asked you to listen to Flood, specifically.
Which is the best one. Which is the best.
It is the best one.
Yeah.
And then I asked you guys to pick your top 3 songs. So Morgan, if you had to pick your top 3 songs from They Might Be Giants, a band
you didn't even listen to them.
I did. I
wouldn't blame her.
I did. I skipped a lot of them.
Did you?
Well,
nope. Nope, not that one. All right. So what were the 3 you listened to, and which one? What are your top 3?
Istanbul. I like that one. Twisting. I'm
trying to think of that one now.
And Lie Still, Little Bottle.
Those are all good. Yeah, those are good. They're not from Flood, but Istanbul is, but the other 2 are not. Mike, you said you were a big fan of these guys. That's good.
I wouldn't say big fan. The thing is, my friend John, when we were in high school, he loved these guys. And when he was driving, I always had to listen to him. So I didn't mind them. I kind of like, this isn't my jam, as the kids say.
As the kids say.
I'm into punk rock. That's my kind of thing. This is totally not my thing. But I was a fan of the Animaniacs, and I've heard, I think it was Birdhouse in the Soul in Istanbul, which is 2 of my favorite. Probably Birdhouse in My Soul is probably my favorite one. I got to give an honorable mention to the John Henry album, because that wasn't a bad one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Flood's their best album, and Birdhouse in Your Soul is probably my favorite song. Yeah, Particle Man's pretty good.
Particle Man, yeah. Twisting is from Flood as well. So that one's good. I think for mine, oh boy, this was hard to kind of pick an actual song. Because especially from the Flood album, honestly, I could listen to that stinking album all day long, over and over again.
They are better than Oingo Boingo. So
yeah. I should mention too. Let me just, before I get to my 3, let me just mention that They Might Be Giants. It started with John Falsborg, and John Linnell. They were middle school friends. They were from Lincoln, Massachusetts. In 1981, they ended up moving to Brooklyn, where they took the name of a band called El Grupo de Rock and Roll, which means the rock and roll band. And they were playing at a concert at that time that was predominantly made up of Spanish-speaking audience members. So they actually came up with this name, El Grupo de Rock and Roll, because they were trying to appease the audience that was there to watch them. Eventually, they ended up taking on the name of They Might Be Giants. And so we've been doing this really cool, fun game here on the show lately, where I ask some of the hosts, or the guest hosts here, how the band came up with the origin of the band name. So, Mike, how do you think they came up with the band name They Might Be Giants?
I don't know, which is strange, because I don't remember. I can't remember how. I know it's gonna be something stupid. So
it's not actually too stupid. It's actually very historical, to believe it or not. So the name came after a 1971 movie by the same name, They Might Be Giants, starring George C. Scott and Joan Goldman, which in turn, that name of the movie was actually lifted from a 1605 novel, Don Quixote. Have you read that one?
Yes.
Sure, why not, right? So in that book, the character Don Quixote is attacking windmills.
Yeah. Now it's coming to me. Yeah. Now
he was attacking windmills.
Yeah,
because he said, quote, they might be giants. And so, and let's just take it one step further down this rabbit hole, because Don Quixote was actually a reference that came from Dante's Inferno, which was that epic 14th century poem, written long ago. So that's kind of the history there. So according to Linnell, and I guess, and he should know, the band wanted a name that sounded awkward, or I guess, I'm sorry, not awkward, but outward looking and a little bit paranoid. And so they came up with They Might Be Giants. The band has been together for 36 years, 21 albums in total. They've actually got some children's albums as well. My brother's a huge fan of these guys.
Yep, Hot Dog.
Have you listened to some of those?
Yeah. Well, Morgan, she listens to, she was into the new Mickey Clubhouse or something like that. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But they do the Hot Dog song. So,
hot dog, hot
yes,
diggity
exactly.
dog.
Which of course is a reference.
I thought you were talking about me for a second.
I'm sorry,
I was
Morgan.
like, what?
No, my daughter. I'm sorry. I forgot the rule at the top of the show. We got to differentiate between the two. I'm sorry. But, well, maybe you do like that show. I don't know. But yeah, so she used to watch that all the time. And of course, hot dog is a reference to what the first words Mickey Mouse ever said. So,
hot dog.
Oh, that wasn't too bad.
Thank you.
That was a good impression.
Because I can't do that. So,
yeah. So they've got I've never listened to any of the children's albums. My brother's a huge They Might Be Giants fan.
I think they got one with the States too. I can't remember. It's been ages since I really listened to them. It's just funny because when I was watching the show with my daughter Morgan, and that came on, I recognized the voice. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that beat, that the way they go about things, and I know that voice. And so I looked it up. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Let me just mention too. So in addition to the children's albums they've done a lot of other stuff. They've made contributions to shows, which you kind of mentioned. Other shows as well. They've done commercials. They even have their own podcasts. I don't know if you know this, but they do a podcast.
Doesn't everybody? Everybody
pretty
has
much these
one.
days. Where they release like these exclusive tracks and pieces to on that show, which is kind of cool. But I thought one of the cooler things that these guys did, they had something called Dial a Song back in 1985. So around that year, 1985, Linnell had broken his wrist, and during that time, they started recording songs on answering machines. They gave out a local number in the Bronx, and so if you got a hold of this number, you could, quote, dial a song. You would call the number up, and you could just listen. So they would, listen to the recording and hear all this exclusive song that never actually made it out onto albums or anything else. It's kind of a neat concept. It was always busy. The line was always busy. But that phone number is 718-387-6962. Again, that's 718-387-6962. It was in service from 1985 to 2008. And don't waste your time.
Oh, wow.
I tried calling this.
I was just going to say, Albert, you had to have called knowing you.
I did.
And
I
now
called.
the poor person that has that line is going to get crank called from the millions of listeners you have.
No, sadly, I don't have a million listeners. And sadly, that phone number you get a busy signal when you dial. So the service is no longer around. But for that span of 1985 to 2008, they were actively recording material on that answering machine, and you could dial a song whenever you wanted. So.
Now I feel like I don't know if you have we had this thing in on Sunday nights, I guess way back in the 80s, we had this thing called Dialing for Dollars, and they'd show a movie, but then they'd call you or something. But anyway, that neither here nor here. I don't even know why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Move along.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just a band that I've always really, really liked. Really love them, and they've got
every band. So
not every band.
Yeah.
Who was the band I didn't like the other day? I thought I mentioned in Discord. All right, I don't know.
No idea. Anyway, move on.
Who cares? All right, well, enough of that. All right, we'll move on. I guess that was the only homework assignment we really had for this one. But I did want to touch on one thing before we get to the main attraction here, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. There was an interesting quote, or I guess an interesting person that Ernie Klein threw in this particular chapter, and that's Bill Hicks. So those of you that are unfamiliar with Bill Hicks, he's actually a stand-up comedian. He was primarily active in like the 80s and early 90s. For the homework assignments, I had asked you guys to watch a very rare performance that he did in 1988. And before we get into maybe the whys of why Ernie put this particular person in here, but Mike, was Bill Hicks somebody? Or I guess let me ask you this, because I really don't honestly know. But do you follow stand-up comedy? And if so, has Bill Hicks ever been on your radar at any point?
I used to back in the day, around when he was active. I would say there was a lot of good comedians, which unfortunately we don't have them anymore for some reason. But I used to, not him per se, but I know of him. I've seen his performances before. I remember the whole Letterman thing that happened there. And the reason I know more about him now, I don't think I've ever seen, I didn't watch the performance I forgot all about it, to be honest. But I do remember the Tool connection, because I like the band Tool, and he used to perform for them before their shows or whatever. So that's how I remember him, because back in the day I was big into Tool and everything, all things dark back then. And his comedy style, I vaguely remember it and stuff. So that's what I remember of him. And sadly, of course, he died of cancer, I think it was.
Yeah.
Shortly in, I think, 94 or something like that. But that's kind of all I remember him. But I remember it's almost like those comedians in the 80s, like Sam Kinison and that, like that. It's kind of like I kind of group them in with them. And they were really good. They were edgy. They were smart. And I don't think we get that anymore. But that's just my opinion. So, but yeah, that's about all I have with Bill Hicks.
Yeah. Morgan, so did you get a chance to watch the performance that he did? And I guess the obvious question is, did you find him funny at all?
Oh, yeah. I do follow stand-up comedy. Since I've gotten a little bit older, I've gotten really into it. And I'd heard of him, but I'd never actually seen any of his stand-up. And I thought he was really funny. But I did notice that he was very dark and very opinionated. And a lot of his jokes, they definitely would not fly today. Not that I think they shouldn't fly, but just, society today, I don't think they would.
Yeah, I think that's
accept
what Mike was trying to hit on when he said there are no good comedians left, and it's because our society's gotten to the point where we can't make fun of ourselves or anyone else for that matter, and unfortunately, with that dies a lot of humor that I think we saw.
I'll say this with comedians back in the day when I grew up, because I like to tend to think about things, and I think that, and George Carlin and I think that's what they were doing. They may have been making a joke, but those jokes made you think. I don't think you get that anymore. So maybe it's like teaching you through laughter, and I don't think we do that anymore. But that's my state. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely known as being a dark comedian, super dark. In fact, there are times, I'm a pretty big Bill Hicks fan. I've always have been, and I've heard a lot of his material. A lot of his material is kind of on par with the link that I sent you guys, where it gets right up to the border, or it gets to the border of really becoming offensive. And then there's other stuff that he does that's extremely offensive, right? I mean, he's really, and one of the cool things, right or wrong, or maybe not cool, it's up to you really, I'll leave it up to you to decide. But one of the things he did was he fed off the audience. He would go up on stage and perform based on the audience reaction. And you can see him looking around. He's constantly scoping out the audience. He plays off of that. And depending on how the audience is reacting, you get these different levels of material. It gets darker and lighter at times. It just really depends on how it was very situational aware of the audience itself and how receptive they were to the jokes. And whenever you saw him in front of an audience and they weren't really laughing, it got really dark real fast, and to the point where he was talking about killing people and murdering people, and it was just pushing the audience members, a lot of times pushing them out of their comfort level and comfort zones. And then you would start hearing more awkward laughter and that kind of thing. But all that said, I think he's a brilliant stand-up comedian. He's got some really good stuff. I think he definitely does some lessons, kind of to Mike's point. In 2005, they did a poll of the greatest comedians of all time. He usually ranks in the top 10 most of the time of comedians of all time, although he didn't really have, to be fair, a very long career, all things considered, given that he died at only 32 years of age from pancreatic cancer. Mike, you mentioned Tool. Again, that was a band. I'm a huge Tool fan, always have been, still am. But yeah, I think it's the Inema album, there is a
Arizona
song called
Bay.
Third Eye, where you can hear bits and pieces from that Dangerous and Relentless album that he does.
Yep.
He's got a number of stand-up albums that you can go listen to. Some of them are just pure comedy, him doing the routines, and then some of the other ones are him just talking. It's almost like a reading from a diary. He's just going on about stuff, life, and it's very interesting. It's dark. Some of it is very dark, so it's not for everyone. He was somebody that was censored too. You touched on this one too with David Letterman. He came out, did a couple shows. There's some controversies, I think, still around whether or not it was CBS or wherever it was the producer of the David Letterman show at the time. But for whatever reason, he came out, he did a show, he did the bit, and it never aired. And it wasn't until years later, well after he had passed, that I want to say, was it his mom or his wife? I don't know who it was. Someone came out onto the show and stood there with David Letterman, and you can find this on YouTube. I've seen the clip before. It's probably still out there, but you can see where Letterman kind of sets it up and saying, "Hey, we never aired this. We probably should have aired it, and I'm going to air it for you now." And they play it, and it's kind of a flashback to like 1992 or something. And it's a really funny bit. It is, again, a little controversial, a little edgy. And when it's over, David Letterman kind of does basically an apology saying, "I'm sorry, we really should have aired this. There was nothing wrong with it." And he's a great comedian that, we should all be, thoughtful of and respectful for. So, it's a very interesting. He had a very interesting life in how he led that with the amount of controversy that just surrounded him because of the things that he spoke about. I guess the only other thing I'd say is Russell Crowe at one point, as recently as 2012, said that he was interested in directing a Bill Hicks biop. He was very much a big fan of him. He originally was trying to find a couple different comedians that would play this role, never kind of panned out. I think it finally got greenlit in 2013. Where it's at this point, I have no idea, but we're talking, we're almost 6 years from when it started. So I don't think we'll probably ever see the light of day over it, but at some point that, maybe would make an interesting story just to kind of get in the head of Bill Hicks. So all that said, what I really want to come back to is, why do we think Ernie Cline threw Bill Hicks in here? Was it just hey, he's my favorite comedian, and I want to make sure that we get him into this novel, or do you think there was anything else there, Mike, in terms of what he was trying to do?
Maybe because it probably his favorite, but I probably something to do with the dark themes that he would talk about, especially with the society in Ready Player One, the whole way that breaks down, and he did do that in his stand-up, so I imagine it has some kind of a nod to that. That's my thoughts. I don't know, you might vary from me.
Yeah. Morgan, any thoughts around that?
I agree with Mike. I definitely get a Bill Hicks vibe from the way Wade is describing the world and society and heaven and hell, like things like that in the beginning of the book. Yeah, I think he is just inspired by him. Too. And his world.
Yeah, he seems like a younger, more naive Bill Hicks, maybe Wade. That being Wade. So, it was interesting because we, in that particular in chapter 6, we have all these bands, we have all these movies, all these books and that sort of thing, and then out of nowhere we get a reference to a stand-up comedian who, right or wrong, most people may or may not even know. So it was just an interesting piece in that particular chapter. So, all right, well, we'll move on from Bill Hicks. And
I did have a question really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I really enjoyed what I saw, and I want to see more, but why did he hate Ronald Reagan so much?
I don't know. And Ronald Reagan is a punching bag for him. Like, there are a lot, like most of his material early in the 80s is him taking cheap shots at well, not cheap shots. He's basically talking about killing him, and he does he impersonates his voice a lot in those early stand-ups as well. But I guess I won't say it's the equivalent of Trump, but if you're the president, you're pretty much open game and you're fodder. And if you look at even the stand-up comedians, or let's just call them show hosts for the Late Show and all that, that is really easy material for them to go after. Because they're, front and center. But there were a lot of people that didn't like Reagan because one reason or another, because of the economy and, Reaganomics and how that didn't really start off the way it was supposed to, and eventually got a little bit better, but that ticked off a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs right after Reagan came in, and he was unfortunately associated, or rightfully, wrongfully, whatever. The facts are, there were a lot of people that lost their jobs right after that. So, if you look at I think about Genesis and their music video around the time when they had the puppets and all of that, they were making fun of Ronald Reagan, but he was kind of an easy target, especially somebody that was a former actor who suddenly was now a politician. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Who is this guy to kind of come in and run the government when all he's done has been in a bunch of Western movies at the time? So I don't know, Mike, do you have a different opinion in terms of that?
I would agree with that, but I'd also say because he was edgy, you got to pick on the biggest guy in the room, or the person in the room, if you will. Mm-hmm. And the president is that. And actually, our country has a long history of picking on the president. I know everyone's sensitive today, but our founding fathers and all that in the back in the day, they were brutal to Lincoln and everything else, in the newspaper. If you go back and check all that stuff out. So I think it's almost like a tradition of even if you're a comedian or someone who's going to go after someone that represents what the government is at the time or the society at the time, you go after the biggest fish in the pond, so to speak. And I think that has something to do with it. I could be wrong, but
no, totally. I mean, I totally agree with you. He just honestly, I've never heard a professional speak that way about about a president before. I mean, not even Trump.
Yep. Yeah. And this was the president in power at the time that he was doing this.
Right.
with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You couldn't say like kill the president today. Like that wouldn't fly at all. Like they'd be on your door in 5 minutes.
Who was it that did that last year? Was it Madonna?
Oh,
she said, let's blow up the White House.
Yeah, that didn't go over well.
No.
Yep. Yeah, and I guess the other person that he takes a lot of cheap shots at around that same time is Billy Ray Cyrus. So, well, I mean, going after the big cheese, I guess he was.
You gotta,
maybe he didn't like mullets. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
You
gotta have balance.
Too.
You gotta have balance. But he has a mullet. In this photo that I'm looking at, it looks like a mullet to me, but, anyway.
I think he did have a mullet. Anyways, all right, we'll come back and talk about mullets another time, another show. All right, so the final thing we've been waiting for, and the title of the show, By the Power of Grayskull, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So
what a weird transition, huh? We go from dark to light to this has been a weird show of transitions. I'll say that.
It is, because we are transitioning into inappropriate sexuality displayed within 80s cartoons. So
that's for sure.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So 1983 to 1985, 130 episodes, which seems like
glorious.
A lot.
Yeah. Well, for a kid, I thought it was more than that, to be honest. I thought it was like thousands, but
yeah, maybe. So this was I'm going to talk primarily about the cartoon, and we can get into the action figures because I definitely want to touch on that a little bit. But so this was created by, is it Michael Halperin who did this, and produced by Lou Scheimer. We'll definitely talk about him in a little bit. And the Filmation Associates. So Filmation was a cartoon company at the time that was cranking out stuff. They had been cranking out animation prior to that, obviously, maybe 10, 20 years before He-Man came out in 83. But let me just talk about Filmation, because honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of them growing up as a kid. I could tell when it was a Filmation cartoon versus other cartoons, and there's very technical reasons why. But I would say the lows for that company, and I'm going to call out Frady Cat because I couldn't stand that stupid cartoon as a kid. You talk about I like everything. I didn't like Frady Cat, so there's one for you. And Wacky Tacky was another one. And then that lame excuse for the Ghostbusters. That thing was the worst cartoon ever, and I was so glad when the real Ghostbusters came out in the 80s because that was my Ghostbusters. But anyways, the highs, though, they did have...
You got on your soapbox.
Yeah, I know. I've been waiting to get that out for almost 40 years.
Wow.
The highs, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, that was awesome. I really loved that.
That didn't age well.
Nope. Thanks, Cosby. Sport Billy. Do you remember Sport Billy? Nope.
No,
all right.
No,
we're going to put a link in the show notes because you got to watch Sport Billy. That was another one.
There's actually a show, if you watched He-Man, like the Filmation, like we did, and then there's a show prior to that, and I can't remember the name of it. You can see it's something to do with swords. I forget what it was, but there was a power sword. It seems exactly the same. They just changed it. If I can't remember the thing of it now, it escapes my mind. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, is it Black Star?
Yes, that's it.
Yep. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was actually a good one. I didn't mind that one at all. But let me just finish my other ones that I liked from Filmation because
okay, hey, get back on your soapbox.
Yeah,
man. I don't mean to interrupt.
The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse, that was good. Heckle and Jekyll was good. The Groovy Goonies, Ghoulies, that one was really good. And then She-Ra and He-Man were the other ones. So, you want to talk about Sport Billy?
No.
Okay, so Sport Billy revolves around a young boy.
I thought we were talking He-Man. I thought that's what are we doing, Albert?
Okay, well, we'll talk about Sport Billy another time. But anyways, let's talk about the cast from He-Man because there's some pretty good people in here. So we had John Irwin as He-Man, Prince Adam. He did other characters he did other characters, right? Ram Man, Web Store,
Ram Man and his metal
Stupid
nipples.
Faker is another one he did the voice for.
Well, did he really do a voice for Faker? Because I don't remember Faker really talking much. But go ahead.
I don't think he talked, but I think he mumbled.
He did the grunts. Yeah,
that was him.
Yeah, okay.
You had Alan Oppenheimer, who played Battle Cat, Man at Arms, Buzz Off. Did he do Skeletor?
I think he did.
Okay,
I thought he did. Yeah, he did.
You had Lou Scheimer as well.
He was Orko.
Yeah, he's also King Randor, and he's your buddy Manny Faces as well.
Yes.
So,
well, actually. Yeah, he is. Yes.
And then we should note that his daughter Elizabeth also did some guest voice acting as well. She came on No main characters, but she came on and did some smaller bit characters.
Those one-offs.
Yeah, really big one-offs. And then you had Linda Gray playing Tila, Evelyn, and then the Sorceress of Grayskull. Pretty much any woman that was on the cartoon was played by Linda Gray. So, Mike, I'm going to let you kind of speak to. So, if you had to give me a 60-second show synopsis, I've never seen He-Man and the Masters of the Universe before. How would you describe the show? What is this show about?
Well, I guess you described it best with the sexual innuendos. Maybe I don't know really. You'd have to just experience it I couldn't really describe it. I mean, it's supposed to be about a guy and his magical sword and all that stuff and it's doing good. But when you get older and you look at it, you see these things that, you're like, oh, they were doing that. And you, as Jonesy and I go back and forth on the show, we've discussed, were they high when they were doing this at times, or what were they doing here? But I really don't have a description for the show, to be honest. I don't know. Yeah. Do you have one other than what you said at the top of the show or of the segment? I think that's the best. I apologize. I don't have a description.
No, you're fine. So I would categorize this as a character about a prince who has a magical sword that has a secret identity, who, when he needs to, turns into this character of He-Man. He also has a pet cat that's a Frady cat. I can't believe I just said
my
that.
only question is, it's just like Superman. How do you not know who's who? I don't understand. That always baffled me, that you cannot put two and two together. Oh, well, Ram-Man almost did. Your favorite person there, Albert. But I never understood that. Like, how do you not?
The pink vest.
Maybe.
I always forget that they don't know who he is.
Yeah, I don't understand. They have the same haircut, the same voice.
They look exactly the same.
The same build.
There's not even like glasses. Like, at least Clark Kent has glasses. Like, all right, I can see that. And he moves his hair a little bit. This is like blatantly, we both look like we got a Dutch boy haircut. We look exactly the same, and you guys can't figure it out. I don't understand it.
I don't.
At least in the newer version, the Mike Young stuff, Adam is younger looking, and he's not as strong, and he turns into He-Man. This was just a blatant copy of, of course, it's Filmation, so that's just how it was going to roll. But
yeah. So Morgan, let me ask you. I guess I'm going into this particular homework assignment and watching He-Man. Was this something that this was your first experience with it, or had you already seen this before? Or were you aware of it? I know there's memes out there and all of that, but I guess what's been your experience with He-Man?
Yeah, I'd seen the memes before, and really, I did not start watching any Masters of the Universe until this past year.
Oh, well, what got you into it, if I do ask?
Well, Ready Player One and you.
Oh. Okay, good. I wasn't sure if there was some other, like, you were under duress or something, or somebody was forcing you to do it. But
yeah, I mean...
Yeah, so
I mean, it's pretty easy to burn through a couple episodes of Masters of the Universe on YouTube with the speed doubled.
Right, yeah. Was this something you found you were enjoying as you watched them?
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's like y'all were talking about. It's funny to like notice the sexual innuendos.
Oh man,
even though I didn't watch it as a child.
Yeah, and I did, and this goes without saying. As kids, I don't think we picked up on any of that stuff, and now you watch it, and it's just so cringeworthy. Like,
some of it's really creepy to be. Well, when you get into the Fistos Forest, man, that was blatantly that was just ooh.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are thrown out there that probably shouldn't be in a. Well, I don't know. It flew back then because it was the 80s, and you could get away with that stuff. But now, I don't know if you could do that. But
no, you can't. Well, hold that thought, because we'll come back to that. But
okay,
let's talk about the title song. So the title song was something that. Okay, so let me back up here.
Okay.
So when Masters of the Universe came out, I don't know what. I think I was really just more into Transformers at the time, to be honest, because we didn't really start following it until like 84, 85. It had already been out for some time. And I was more into Transformers and maybe G.I. Joe. So my younger brother, who's 6 years younger than me, he was really into Masters of the Universe. So every Christmas he got all the toys, and I would just be like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool, whatever. I'm more into Star Wars and and
you're
the
just
other stuff.
Too cool.
I was too cool for Masters of the Universe. But that said, I did like the title song. I thought it was a pretty catchy tune. Interestingly enough, the song was written by two gentlemen, so Shuki Levy and Haim Saban.
I'm so glad you didn't say what's his face from Oingo Boingo.
Now Danny Elfman had no play in this one.
Yeah, that would have haunted me.
But they were an Israeli-American team, and they went on to compose a number of other famous cartoon theme songs like Inspector Gadget. They did
Good
Mask. Show. Yep. Dinosaurs, Eagle Riders. They did the theme song to She-Ra. They did the theme song to Jason the Wheeled Warriors, if you remember that one. That one's a really good one as well. The Real Ghostbusters, which I mentioned earlier. And then, of course, Power Rangers, because if you heard what I said, Haim Saban, that's actually the guy that created Saban Entertainment, which we all know today as being the parent company that owns all the rights to all the Power Rangers. So, anyways, the song itself, the He-Man song, I thought was just super iconic. It's right up there with me in terms of the best 80s songs that came out at the time. So I think they did a really, really great job with that particular piece and She-Ra as well. I think She-Ra's right up there, although it's just a rip off of He-Man's song. Interesting. I guess another interesting aspect of He-Man is the episodes always, and you touched on this earlier, Mike. They have these PSAs, these public service announcements for it that they would throw in there, which I always thought was odd as a kid. But then I would see it in G.I. Joe. Later on, I would come to find out that this was done because they were really trying to offset the fact that they had cartoons that were maybe teetering on the edge of violence that was not appropriate for programming at the time. And so they had to find a way to balance it out. So they would, do some really mean things like throw somebody in the mud. Ooh, shocking. Or something would blow up, or they would punch a robot, and they would need to offset that by going, okay, now we're going to have a lesson here as a public service announcement and what you shouldn't do and the lessons that you learned from watching this show. But
there was one guy that was on I think it was one of the writers. It was in one of the documentaries I saw where he hated these PSA things at the end because he always felt like the episode itself was the lesson and you didn't need to rehash it. Mm-hmm. But they had to do it because, you're a cartoon selling toys is really what it was. And, you might have upset the parents there. So we had to, do something that was blatantly like, yeah, we're teaching a moral lesson here. But the guy had a fight with whoever, and he's saying, no, the cartoon itself is the moral lesson. And to be fair, he was actually right, because when you watch him, other than the sexual innuendos and all that other stuff, if you get to the lesson that they were trying to get at, it did have that moral compass, so to speak, lesson there. But sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So let's talk about the episode real quick. So we talked about watching Fisto's Forest, Cosmic Comet, and the Mysteries of Manny Faces. So let's just talk real quick about Cosmic Comet. Morgan, did you get a chance to watch these episodes?
Yes, I did.
All right.
I watched all three.
So give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts when you were watching Cosmic Comet. Yeah, no, that's why I'm like, I can't wait for this one. All right. So what did you think as you were watching Cosmic Comet?
I thought it was very interesting that they had a story about two comets that were friends forever.
Yeah.
Hanging out in space.
That look like sperm, but go on.
Yep.
But I don't know. I mean,
okay, so let me ask you this. Let me set something up. And I don't want to set you up, but I'm going to. So that particular episode came out as and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but this was the premiere episode, right? This is the first one they released. However, it's not when you watch this episode, they don't really give you a lot of context of who the heck anybody is or really what's going on whatsoever. We're used to pilot episodes going, no, here's your main character and here's the setting they're in and here are their friends and here's the situation and here's this plot line and that kind of thing. They kind of just throw you in the middle of this cartoon.
Oh,
did you feel that way?
Episode?
That was the first.
I had no idea.
That wasn't the one that that was the first they aired.
They aired,
but
right.
That wasn't the real actual episode. That comes later on, actually, for some odd reason.
Stupid reason.
Okay.
But who knows? It's the 80s. That's, like I said, they might have been high at the time. So who knows? But yeah, that was definitely, and then the whole Orko thing and the love, that all, that was weird.
All right. Okay. Now I see where you were going. Yes. I had no idea. I figured that was like episode 28, that's very odd that they did not really explain who anybody was or what was going on for sure.
Yeah, they did a really bad job, I think, in terms of it. And what episode is the original pilot, Mike?
Offhand, I do not know. Jonesy told me about it, and I can't remember. He'd mentioned it because we were doing the episode, and then after it, he must have looked it up, and he told me, and I've kind of forgot since then. So
there are a lot of other problems with this episode, to be honest.
Well,
I mean,
everything.
it's riddled. The whole cartoon, really, the whole series, the whole run is riddled with their issues. But and I'm actually a fan of He-Man, so don't get me wrong. But this, there were a couple other things. Mike, you touched on the Orko thing.
Yeah.
There's that creepy moment where they're like, him and Tila are like, I don't know, he's sexually attracted to her. I don't know what's going on there.
Tila seems to be the one attracted to him. I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to say there, but yeah.
It was
the
bizarre.
Whole love, let's preach love or whatever around the comet thing. That was, the whole thing was, I don't even know what they were thinking.
Yeah, and there's one moment in there, and sorry, I don't want to get graphics. I know we got kids, including my own, that listen to the show, but there's one moment in there where, go back and watch it. Tila runs off. You can see her running off, and then she turns around and comes running back. And she's wearing this belt that's got this thing that dangles right in front of her crotch. When she's running back, it looks like her ding-a-ling flying back and forth. I'm like, who the heck approved this? No. And why was it allowed? But there's just stuff like that is just way too creepy that someone had to have known. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you about these double entendres and the suggestiveness of this cartoon. Has it ever really anybody done anything there to kind of dive in and ask these writers or these creepy people that whether or not this was all intended? Were they doing this on purpose, or was it just a series of coincidental things that occurred in this cartoon?
Because Jonesy and I debate this on the podcast, and I tend to think it was deliberate. He thinks it was maybe not. And Jonesy, if I'm wrong, please feel free to send me a message on Discord that I was wrong here, but I don't want to mean to speak for you. But I believe we kind of go back and forth with this each episode when we get into the segment of is that sexual on the show. And I don't, to my knowledge, I don't recall anyone coming out and saying, yeah, they did that purposely, like any of the writers, which is surprising because most of the people, like when you watch those documentaries and that, they're pretty forward about everything. And I don't remember seeing or hearing anyone say, yeah, we did that intentionally. So no, I haven't seen anybody say officially at least, but to me, it seemed it was on purpose.
Well, I'm with you. Call me. Yeah, I'm just gonna
because the animators have a history of doing these
right.
Oh
things.
yeah.
So
have you ever seen those videos about the Disney movies?
Exactly. That's where I was going.
Yes, I've seen those too, and you're like, whoa, where did yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm with you on that. I cannot believe for 1 second that someone didn't intentionally do these things, and maybe they were meant to be innocuous, and I mean, be what they are, but be innocuous and not really be that suggestive. But I think it's just bad judgment if either way, if that was the case, because there's just too many situations that make me uncomfortable now as an adult. So, so let's talk about the toy line, because this was obviously, and I guess the question I've got, Mike, is was it a show to sell toys, or were the toys to sell the show? I mean, which came first, or was it both? I mean, what was going on here? Because
the toy came first.
Yeah.
And if you watch those documentaries, when they're kind of making it up as they go, which I think is relevant in the cartoon. Like, I think you can see they were doing that as well. But with the toys, they would, they go to these meetings and the guy would just say, oh yeah, it's going to come with a mini comic. And then they'd leave the office and the guys, what do you mean a mini comic? And then, they had to make a mini comic because they'd said they were going to. And then the other guy said, oh yeah. Well, and then, they go to another meeting. I think it was with Toys R Us or whatever. And they said, well, but kids can't read, which is me and Jonesy, because we never read mini comics except for you, Albert.
Yeah.
You apparently did, you and Crawley. And so then the guy says, well, they don't do that. He goes, oh yeah, there's going to be a cartoon. So they had to go and figure out how to make a cartoon. And that's how everything came to be. But I always thought the toys were the main thing for me, not so much the show. Because when you get the toy and you watch the show, they don't exactly line up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always like, I liked what I came up with in my head and used the action figures and stuff like that. I didn't really go off the show. I liked the show. It was fun to watch after school. Then G.I. Joe, Transformers, that whole lineup there was great. So Did it sell toys? I think probably, yeah, it sold a ton of toys because it was it was a commercial basically for kids, just like G.I. Joe and Transformers. So, yeah, I guess it was a back and forth.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, when we talked about the PSA stuff, that may have been another aspect of this. They couldn't really, well, maybe that wasn't here in the U.S. I think it was in the UK or in Europe where they had some pretty, and they even to this day they still do. They have some pretty strict restrictions on what you can sell or advertise to children because of propaganda and that kind of thing. And at the time when this came out, there was a lot of controversy around He-Man because they kind of what you said, they felt like this was just a 30-second or 30-minute cartoon or commercial to sell toys. And so they had to find a way to kind of get around that and maybe soften that up a little bit. And so that's where we got some of this PSA stuff as well, so that it wasn't just a 20 to 30 minute commercial. It was actually, there's a life lesson here as well that we'd like to kind of hit on. So yeah, I would agree that the toys were probably the bigger pull for me growing up as well. Even I didn't really particularly like the cartoon. I've got some problems with the cartoon. It's the animation's just Filmation. It's kind of their mark. Sometimes the frame rate gets really high and sometimes it gets really low. The colors are always, the backdrops are always this weird kind of, I don't even know. They're a gradient, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's Eternia. I don't know. Maybe that's just the way the skylines are drawn there. But I just never really was a big fan of the cartoon and the animation. I thought and then the character voices themselves. So I'm sorry, Mike. I think we've talked about
too much reverb.
There's too much reverb. I don't. On top of that, I was never a fan of Skeletor's voice. I think he's got one of the coolest. No,
What's wrong with you? That's like the highlight of the whole thing.
Listen here, you boob.
Skeletor lines are the best, man.
He's got a very awesome look, but then he talks like that. Man, it just doesn't do anything.
I think that's what makes he's like my favorite character. And I think that's why is because he's this muscular dude, and then he's got this annoying voice.
Yeah, thank you. It is annoying. See, I told you it's annoying.
It's good. It's annoying in a good way. You can't picture that character without any other voice.
Oh yeah, I can.
In that show, really?
He-Man.
Like what?
Yeah, I can do a voice. I can. Give me the shot. I'll do a voice for him.
No, don't do that.
Anyways, Skeletor, it was a cool looking character. I never liked his voice.
I thought Beastman was the more annoying thing.
Yeah, Beastman's annoying. Ram Man.
I never liked.
He's just an idiot the whole time.
You just don't like Ram Man and his metal nipples. That's the problem.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, had a whole thing on that episode that we did.
So hold on. I don't think we've actually really even announced this. We've been talking like everybody knows, but if you don't know, Mike's got a new show that's coming out. In fact, it aired tonight, right?
Yes, officially it's launched. Yes. Today.
So no, go ahead, take it away. Plug it real quick if you don't mind.
It's called The Many Faces of the Masters of the Universe. Me and Jonesy for the most part is my co-host, I would have to say. But we bring on guests and we discuss the characters, which is hence many faces because he's a character with many faces. But there's a lot of characters in Masters of the Universe. So we break things down from the Filmation to the mini comics to the Mike Young production stuff, which is the newest stuff, and that's the better series to watch. So Morgan, if you want to get into Masters of the Universe, that's probably the series you want to go in, which is a little more, makes more sense, I guess you could say, and stuff like that. So
Morgan, you don't have to watch that, Morgan.
Yeah, you don't have to, but if you'd like to, feel free to go there.
Shot.
Don't go to Filmation.
A shot.
Yeah, don't go to Filmation. Well, to be honest, it gets a little graphic with the snake men when they come involved because they eat people, and it's really weird. But anyway, so yeah, it's a seasonal podcast. So we've got 11 episodes this season 1, and we've just launched the first 6, and we're going to record the others and get that out probably sometime in the first of the year and go from there and then plan on season 2 and stuff. So it's kind of like a mesh of the Cantina cast and then and kind of the basement in the humor side of things. I'm trying to mesh the two together and kind of talk about these weird characters that I grew up with. So
right. Well, and it's again it's Many Faces of the Masters Universe. It's a show that we've got as part of the Irregular Media Network. We'll talk.
Nice plug.
Thank you. We'll talk about that at the very end. But so anyway, the only reason I said that is because we've been talking about like, oh yeah, on the show we did talk about this and we talked about Ram Man. I forgot we talked about his nipples. I'm actually on one of the. I think I'm on the Ram Man episode.
Yes, and you'll be on Faker as well. You'll be on Faker.
I can't wait because I hate that character. But
yes, if Morgan would like to, she can come on the. I think it's King Randor. If she wants
Morgan,
to come on.
Listen to that. Wow.
If you want
you're just jumping at that one. King Randor.
I bet you're excited for that one.
I'm down. I'm down for anything.
Okay.
All right.
Well, so we're kind of talking about Ram Man in his creepy S&M outfit that he wears. But anyways,
you say that like it's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing.
It is not. But
all right, Mike, I'm going to ask you, what was your favorite toy growing up as a kid?
Stinkor.
The actual action figure? What about a vehicle? Any vehicles for you?
The USS Flag. I had that. The G.I.
I don't even know what that is.
No.
No, I'm talking about He-Man toys.
Oh, well, no. The
Stay on topic.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were in all times there. Sorry. No, well, Stinkor is my favorite character, and the action figure was my favorite. As far as the vehicles go, I didn't really go for the vehicles. I was more, Strido was pretty cool. He wasn't bad. I liked him. And then, of course, Grayskull.
Strider was that the spider black and red one?
No, that was the Rotor. I think it was the spider thing. And then Strido was the horse, the metal horse.
Oh, that's right.
And then what was the evil one? The one with Fisto. What the heck was his name? Now I can't think of it. Shadow or something like that. All right. I can't remember it. That's how it sounds horrible. I got a He-Man podcast and I can't remember the character. Awful. I'm fired.
Good night, everybody. Morgan, did you ever play with these toys growing up, or have you ever seen any of them?
I've seen them. I've never played with any Masters of the Universe toys.
Yep,
I was a little too young for that.
Yes, you did, Albert. Come on now.
Vince, Mike, I didn't mean that in a bad way.
No, that's okay. That's fine. I
played with Barbies anyway, so.
No. Well, my sister's mad at me because my He-Man's beat up her Barbies all the time. It was, Yeah,
we're going to have to figure out Morgan, we'll work in Barbies some way so we can get you on your soapbox.
Sounds good.
Be a SME subject matter expert.
I played with Legos too as a kid. So
yeah, we'll get to Legos at some point. All right, so let's talk. I guess let's kind of wrap this up in terms of He-Man. Let's just talk real quickly about the legacy. There was a movie that came out in 1987. We should mention that at least. It was directed by Gary Goddard, who actually it starred Dolph Lundgren. So everybody knows who Dolph Lundgren is, right?
Yep. I must break you.
Yeah, he's only known really as playing He-Man. And then Drago in the original Rocky IV, which is an amazing movie, amazing soundtrack, but that's another time for a story for another time. It's got Frank Langella in it. It's got Courtney Cox, a very young Courtney Cox, mind you. Robert Duncan McNeil and Meg Foster is, I think she plays Evelyn, if I'm not mistaken. There was a 2016 cartoon series that Mike's been touching on. And was that really just was that a reboot of sorts? Did they do anything original, or was it just kind of a continuation of the 83 cartoon?
It was more of a reboot or reimagining of things, because I think it went initially off of the classics line, the toy line that they had that ran for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of based off of that, and then they kind of did their own thing and kind of made their own canon, so to speak. And that was the beauty of the Masters of the Universe, is they have several different canons and no one freaks out about it. It's kind of all right, that's cool, we'll go with that.
Right.
Which is vastly different from Star Wars.
Absolutely. Vastly different Star Wars. There was also, we should mention, in Ready Player One, the movie, Wade's lunchbox in his hideout is a Masters of the Universe lunchbox. And if you go back and watch the special features, you've got Ernie Klein actually talking about Masters of the Universe and how influential it was to him growing up as a kid. So I guess maybe the last thing, I've got a question for you, Mike, and I honestly don't know because I didn't really do any research here, but maybe you'd know. What's next? Where are we with He-Man fandom? Is it just kind of there's a couple podcasts out there and there's no talk of a new movie or a series reboot? Or
there was a talk of a movie, and it seemed like it was a go, and it was supposed to come out in 2019, but that seems to have stalled, like all things. I think because Mattel has their own studio now, kind of like Marvel does, so now they kind of want to do it right. I hope they do it right, because the next Masters of the Universe movie needs to be good in order for it to, be, I don't know, sustainable, I guess you could say, because, you know, the classic stuff's going to last for a while, but eventually you need to pump some new life into the franchise, which I think will be fine because everyone, you know, like I said, it's like 700 different canons and you'll just go with it. There doesn't need to be one particular canon, so to speak. And originally this was all made up on the fly anyway, so why the hell not? Right. So hopefully that'll happen. I don't know when that'll happen anytime soon. I just hope they do it right. That's the big thing. And I've talked with Jonesy before on the show, I think even on the horrible pilot episode that we did, it was a little rough. We'd even mentioned, well, you got to do it right. And how would you do that? Like, are you going to go the Conan Barbarian way, which is what I like, where it's the horses and all that stuff, not as much mechanical stuff? Or are you going to go the full science fiction side of things? How do you blend that? That's the key there. You just had the She-Ra reboot on Netflix. So that you got to kind of think, well, if that's successful, then you're going to have a He-Man reboot at some point on Netflix. And that's with DreamWorks. So yeah, we'll see. I think something will happen soon. I hope so, because I need more content for my show. Well,
so here, I've got it. I've got the answer. I know how to release a He-Man movie, make it hugely popular and successful. And Morgan, back me up. All you need to do is cast Channing Tatum. That's it. Put him in the loincloth.
Yeah.
Put him in. Yeah. Put him as a main character, and you got it. So there you go, Mike. Pitch that, and this will be a huge movie. Trust me.
I don't think that's going to work, but I'd let him audition.
I mean, maybe not him. Maybe somebody equally as hunky. You know.
Well, I'm sure you could find somebody. I mean, you know, we'll see. We'll see what'll happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't. I would. So, on an all serious note, I've seen the She-Ra cartoon on Netflix. My daughter loves that thing. There are things that are happening in that cartoon that I think they're leaving the door wide open for a He-Man reboot, and the world's kind of coming together.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, I think they're spot on there.
It'll probably happen. Maybe not right away. Probably in a year or so. We'll get maybe some news on that, and then we'll see how that goes. The challenge with that is, I think, you know, initially when Mike Young did his thing, I walked away. I was like, yeah, you know, because you had the Filmation thing in your head and you had all these other ideas in your head. And then, you know, now that I started the podcast and I go back and watch that, it's so much better than you remember. And you're like, why did this end? Because it was really, really good. I think that's going to be the problem. The new He-Man would have, like the animation thing. I think that would be the bigger issue, is how do you compete with that? But we'll see. I look forward to it anyway.
Morgan, I guess final thoughts on He-Man, and I didn't ask you about the She-Ra cartoon. Have you seen that one?
The one on Netflix? No, I have not.
Yeah, the new one.
But I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I don't know what your opinion is, but you know, I thought it was actually pretty decent.
It wasn't bad. It has its ups and downs. It has a lot of heart. I'll say that.
Oh, that's sweet.
No, it does. You get by all the, you know, the surface stuff where everyone's going to complain and, you know, do their thing, because that's what we do these days. If you look at the story, there's a good story there.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, sorry, Morgan. Final thoughts on He-Man. Anything you want to add there?
Skeletor rules.
Oh, never mind. All
Completely agree. He is the show. And the Manny Faces episode was awesome.
Yeah, you're a boob.
Yeah. Man, I love when he does that. Evil in you, boob.
You boob.
That's great.
Let's get that out of here.
Next season, because we do the sexual thing this year, I think next season we're going to do Skeletor quotes. I think that's where we're going. But
that's fine. I'm in for that, because he does have some pretty good one-liners, and he's such a jerk face the entire time in that cartoon.
Well, He-Man's got some great dad jokes, so we might do that as well, because you're like that with your dad jokes. So we'll see.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we're going to end this show. Finally, here we are, 2 hours and 18 minutes later. Mike, you've got to edit this, so good luck with that, buddy.
Thank you.
We'll end the show here, but before we go, I've got just a couple shout outs that I want to call out here. So Alexander Wolfgang, aka DeLorean Wolfgang on Twitter. I just want to say thank you for following the show and supporting the show. He's been one of my first followers ever, I think, to be honest. So he's been a pretty good fan to have, and someone that really supports the show in a lot of different ways. Also got some great feedback on iTunes that I want to share. Stewie8256, love your podcast. I'm a child of the 80s and a nerd at heart, so this is right up my wheelhouse. Count Bank said, Albert and the Gunters take you on an epic journey with each episode into the world so skillfully crafted in Ernest Cline's novel Ready Player One. Thank you for that one. And I thought I had some more in here. I'll get to the other ones next time on next show. I don't want to spend. There's still some other reviews that people posted that I definitely want to cover. So thank you guys for supporting the show. Thank you to everyone there. And before we go, let me just kind of get you guys, if you don't mind, Morgan, if these folks want to follow you on Instagram, where can they find you at?
They can find me at Morgan McFly23
on Instagram. Are you doing Twitter or anything?
They don't want to follow my Twitter.
All right, so just stick to Instagram.
Yeah.
And you can see all of Morgan's picks on, Back to the Future and other really cool stuff. And are we going to, sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but are we ever going to see your Twitch channel? Because I'm looking forward to that whenever it comes out.
Yes, I do have plans to do that. Yes. I just got to get all the equipment that I need.
No, you need to stop playing Fortnite.
No, I'm going to be playing Fortnite. So I'm sorry, all of you 80s people out there, but there will be a lot of Fortnite. But I do want to play some retro games. I want to have days that I dedicate to just playing retro stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, add Journey, the arcade game, to that list, because that'll be
arcade
game.
Yes, that's a great game.
No.
So all right. Was that created by the band Journey?
Yeah, it's actually the band Journey.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk after the show.
So not awesome. So not awesome.
Mike, where can these fine folks find you if they want to follow your new show or any of the other shows you don't do?
Just go to airgluemedia.com. You can find all the links and all that stuff there. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me over there. It'll link you to something. The good news is, Albert, my daughter, Morgan, loves playing Pac-Man on my arcade machine behind me. So
good for her.
She loves
parenting done right.
She likes the old classics there. So
yep. And then I guess real quick again, we should plug that we are part of Ear Glue Media, and we've got a roundtable coming up. I guess sometime we've got a new show that's coming next year where we're going to get some of the hosts from the different shows and just get them together and sit down and talk about nothing really. So if you like hearing me and Mike fight,
Seinfeld of the Ear Glue Media,
pretty much is what it's going to be. So it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So I can't wait till we get started on that. But you can find more on that show and all the other ones on our website at eargluemedia.com. I will put in the links to the basement stuff and how you can support us on Patreon and TeePublic and all that stuff as well. So let me just talk about real quickly. Next time on this show, we'll be back. Actually, we're going to record this next show next week, so you won't have to wait as long for the sequel or the final part of chapter 6 here.
Really?
Jonesy,
there's a final? Yeah. Oh my God!
For chapter 6, there is a final one.
I'm going to have an alcoholic beverage after that. Oof.
That's not uncommon for you every night. But Jonesy from the Cantina Cast will be joining me. So I think I don't know if this is. He's been on before, but we'll be talking Jeopardy, Space Giants. Oh, I love the Space Giants. We're going to talk G-Force or Battle of the Planets, Thundar the Barbarian. We'll look at Devo as one of the bands, Van Halen as one of the bands.
That's good.
And we're going to hit the sucker home with the director, George Lucas himself. So we'll give us our perspective on...
Sure, don't invite me for that one, huh?
George Lucas. And maybe we'll get Mike in there. I don't know. We'll see how much
I don't want to ruin your time, sir. I've already ruined this show, so...
Yep. And with that, we'll probably end the show. Thanks, guys, for joining me tonight. Morgan, thanks for being here. We'll see you very soon again, right?
Thank you for having me. Yes, you will.
Absolutely. And Mike, it's only going to be till tomorrow that I see you talk to you again. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining. We will see you guys on the next episode. The views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademarked, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.